And yeah, it's a great club. But I do now live in Montana. Jeff and I do. So you'll see Jeff over there. He'll use his name. He's off camera. But yeah, he was a member before me. He and Uncle Charles, I don't know if Charles is on here, were members very early on. They've been in about 20 years. So we've got a lot of history here with the club. But Jeff and I have moved to Montana. So that is where I'm coming from. And I was trying to find a, give me 1 second. I will show you. Oh, I don't really have a picture. I thought maybe I had a picture of the yard here, but I don't have it in this particular Zoom, so I can't really tell you where I'm from. But the picture behind me was taken at Glacier, so I live about 30 miles outside of Glacier National Park. I do have feedback for you, John. This is a separate thing. This is a member comment, and maybe it's also operator error. But I have found that when you put your photos in, you can't edit them. Like there's no go back and see what you put in, or is that my imagination? Because if there's some instruction around that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll send out some more instructions on how to add that to your photos before they're submitted. Because yeah, once they're submitted to SmugMug, it's a feature. You can't go back and edit them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it had more to do with, Jeff was like, oh, I want to change my photo, and I'm like, yeah, I said he was SOL, and I've just confirmed he was SOL. So, so you're running the show. So yeah, let's get started. Wherever you want to start is fine. And
we'll get started with Novice Color.
Okay. So can you go, are we going to go and comment as we go, or do you want to go through them?
I can do it how you'd like. So if you've not seen them all before, maybe it would be good just to go through them so you can see, so you can see them. And then
I can see
of course
on the screen. And I can buy it on the screen. I see that.
yeah. So just ignore the buy photo, and after a second of holding the mouse steady, that will disappear. So we'll go through these.
Okay. Okay.
You want me to just go through, or you want to call next?
Yeah, just go through them all, and when we get back to the first one, then I'll start commenting.
All right, so I'll
give me a chance to.
Yep. I'll give you
a second
few
or
seconds
two.
on each. Yep.
Thank you.
And we're back at the beginning.
Okay. Yep. Okay, so I'll start off first of all, just by saying that I'm going to try to provide you information. Like my feedback is going to be about kind of what I see, what I would think about if it was my photo, what would I do the same, what would I do differently, and try to give you some just ideas of what I think might make a stronger image. That said, I just want to stress, like our imagery is like really personal to ourselves, and take what I say in that gesture. It's just like this sort of kind of how it strikes me today. It could strike me differently tomorrow. And if you love the picture the way that it is, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But in trying to provide some critique and feedback and some constructive thoughts about it, I just don't want anybody to kind of say, oh, well, this is, I don't like that feedback. That's fine. You don't need to. Take it with a grain of salt, and don't think that my way is the only way. So somebody else looking at the photos might completely give you a totally different set of feedback. So just realize that judging is uber subjective. So I just want to throw that out there as a general comment. So this is a really interesting, when I look at this, it kind of makes me wonder where I am, and like maybe what building am I in, but also the fact that there's all these differences, right? Laundry day for some people have awnings. Like it's really sort of intriguing. And I think like shooting into windows, like in cities, is very interesting. I've done it mostly in Chicago And when I get home and I'm able to like zoom in and really like peer into the windows, it's very interesting what you see going on. Now, today our lighting is such that you don't really see as far into these apartments as you might, but man, if you took the same shot at night, there'd be all kinds of different activity going on. So it's kind of wild. I don't mind the diagonal, but I do wish that the straight lines were straight. So the diagonal of the gray band going across doesn't bug me as much as the sort of lines between the apartments are a little bit off. It looks like the building is leaning slightly to the left, and that's most dramatic on the furthest left of this picture, where the space at the very top where that window is cut is different size than the window at the bottom. So not necessarily trying to square it up like we're facing straight on, but make sure that the building doesn't feel like it's falling back when you're doing architecture. And I think just a little bit of work with the geometry tools in Lightroom or Photoshop would go a long way, just to straightening up the lines between the apartments. It's a little bit bright, and so there's a lot to see. And so what I mean by bright is that the light is the same across all of it. And my eye bounces around, but doesn't really kind of rest on anything. And that can be handled through some vignetting, like where do you, the photographer, want me to focus? So do you want me to, because I'll tell you, actually, I look around and then I kind of go straight to the red laundry, the particularly red laundry in the second column, middle of the scene. And maybe that's what you want me to see. But then I leave it and I go look at other things. So maybe some vignetting would help as well to just kind of guide the viewer to where you want them to focus. Is it a particular apartment or whatnot? So that's kind of my general thing. I think at the broad glance, I would like it to be straight up and down. I think that would go a long way for me. So, and there's a few things that are in the bands that go across between the floors that I would probably have cloned out. So I don't know if you want to point to those, John, but they're not to the right of that, two windows to the right of where you are. Keep going. No, that back left, the black spot. I wish I had control. Anyway, but below some of these windows, there's like black smudges. Yeah, like where John is now. And I think that I would probably clone those because they're dark. They're like dust spots, right? So a dark spot in a bright thing. And what I do is I look around and my eye goes right to them and I try to figure out what they are, and they're not really the point of the photo. So in the future, even though, yes, it's a smudge and that's what the building looked like, things that will pull your eye away from whatever else you want the viewer to look at, you should think about cloning out. Next. Thank you. So this is, if it isn't, it looks like a portal on a boat. I believe that it is. And so the window's open, so you've got the other side of it here to the left. And at first I was actually going to say, like, maybe I didn't like that to the left, but it is sort of interesting, and you get the sense of the window actually being open to take a shot. But what I would say is that what I see, when I look at this, I look at it and I see the scene, and that's fine. The horizon is a little higher on the right than it is on the left. So I would make sure that you tilt this, because from a portal standpoint, right, the window itself is round. So like there is no straight up and down. I would make sure that the scene where that cliff side is level, and it might very well be level. I will put that out there, but because usually like on shorelines, the distance being different, it'll give the sensation of being off the horizon. And I would straighten it, because nobody else is going to really know that, but what it really looked like, but it does kind of read as being off angle. But when I see the portal door, the window door on the left, the fact that window's got like stuff in it, so go to the left, John, it to me is like, I look over there, it's bright. There's this bright circle. No, up higher, right up there. Those spots and everything are distracting to me. And when you think about it, right, you've got the red circle that definitely catches your attention, but the rim of the window is actually substantially brighter. And the way that rim is in the photo, it starts at a corner and it leaves at the top corner, and it takes you out. So it's the brightest thing on the page. So it's the thing that your eye will drift over there. And when then you follow the half circle out, either way you go, you're going to leave the picture because it's taking you right to the corner of the frame and then you're out. So there's some challenges in that because there's not really any other way to shoot it. You could darken it down through dodging or burning, excuse me, dodging is brightening, but burning. And I would probably kind of just do some spot removal on the picture inside that white frame because, again, even though the picture's right in front of me, I go to the left and that's what I'm looking at, this partial photo. And then I've got what looks like dust spots. It's just smuck on the window and this really bright rim. So you'll end up getting your viewer to leave the frame. So that's just something to think about, to try to figure out how do you get your eyes back. And by darkening that down a little bit, cleaning it up, and it will not be as much of a draw, and that'll leave the viewer looking out the window with you. Next. So I really love this, a beautiful reflection. I would say something similar to what I did at the beginning. If you look at this building, it is falling away from us. And that means the top feels further away than the bottom front. And that's just because you're using a fairly wide angle lens. You're below it, you're shooting up at it. And the geometry tools within Photoshop and Lightroom, you can just draw some lines and pull that forward so it straightens it up automatically. And I'm not talking about squaring it off. Again, leading the diagonals is all fine. And it's a nice scene off to the right, but it is about bringing it forward so it doesn't look like the building is falling backwards. The other thing is that even though we're looking at windows and it's not really dust spots in the sky, all of those little spots that kind of go along the beautiful sunset part or sunrise part, whatever time of day this is, right? In the purple, you'll see all these spots on the windows. Those need to be cloned out because, again, they're in the brightest part of the photo. So you're looking around, you go, oh, look at all this beautiful blue. Let's go look at all the pink and gold and white light. And all you do is stop on the spot. So I would make sure that you, just clone them out. The software does it for you really easily. And then lastly, if you go all the way to the left from where you are, John, all the way to the last window, stop, up, that's a dust spot. So in addition to the fact that there's like schmuck on the window, if you have dust on your sensor, there's some great videos. I used to do this for Club and clean sensors, but there are some great videos on how to do it. You do not need to go spend $60 to have a quote unquote professional do it. You can learn to do it yourself. And you want to keep it clean or be really mindful when you have photos with big open space, so skies, water, whatever, that you clone out those spots. And anybody who knows me, and I've judged a long time, it's my pet peeve. Okay, next. So this is a beautiful garden scene. And I think that, and I love the door. I think it's a beautiful door, that gate coming in. But is the photo really about the door? Is it the path? Is it the garden? I think this one works, but sometimes when we're going to go take a picture, particularly in a themed competition, we want to make sure that there's a way to exaggerate the thing that is of the theme, right? And this might be a great curved line or leading line. It does go to a gate and a door, which is cool, but I don't know when I first look at it. If my first thought was like, oh, what a beautiful garden, as opposed to what a beautiful door. But I can get there with this. Now, what I would tell you is on the right-hand side, so kind of where your arrow is, you're kind of pointing at it, there's a white flower. Clone that out. So the fact that there's flowers, these hydrangeas or whatnot on the left are cut off, that's okay, because there's a whole plant and you get the sense of what those are attached to. Although you certainly could consider the super bright one, go up, up, up. Those two, that one and the half one below, no, lower, the one below it, that one, I would probably cut that half flower out and I would tone the bright flower down, because it takes me to the edge, and once I'm on the edge of your frame, I'm going to leave. Like, my mind mentally goes elsewhere. For the flower on the right, it doesn't have an anchor. So because you don't see the rest of the plant, you don't see any of its friends, it's just this bright white ball, again, on the right edge of the frame, and it will take you out. And there's one right above it, about 3 inches. Both of those I would clone out. Just either clone them or crop them. If you cropped in just a 1/2 inch, you would also remove them, but you would lose your path. So to save the path curve, the only way to do that is cloning it out. But I would be very mindful of what's on the edge of your frame, and big things that are bright that will take your eye out of your beautiful scene will draw you there. I would be mindful of the flowers out by the door. The door seems like it's got all its detail, but those flowers are a little bit bright. Maybe just pull back the highlight slider a smidge, and that will help tone down the brightness, and you don't have, that way it won't feel like you've got blown pixels back there on those white flowers and green leaves. All right, so here's one where we have like a door, right? And and it's a nice door. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this door, but I would say that the brightness of the bricks around it just detracts from it. I think that like kind of maybe a different time of day with the store would bring it out. And also it's not really tack sharp. So when I look at it, if you look at the grinding stone in front, I can't really find the thing that's in focus here. Like, where's the sharpest point? And I don't know, which makes it hard. Like, I guess I don't know. I don't know what you were focused on. And, but I don't think it's quite the door, and I don't think it's quite the stone in the front. And so as a result of that, I start to wander because my eye is looking for something that's going to be in sharpness. I think probably the thing I look at most is the orange leaf stuck to the door in the light side of the door, but it too isn't sharp. And I will say, like, maybe this isn't enough resolution to be projected. That's a possibility. It could just be the sharpness. So just kind of be mindful. And when you have patchy light like that, sometimes it can also be difficult because the light patches to the right in the orange part of the brick draw my eye away from the door again. So between the brightness and the sort of softness of the image, I struggle to stay within the image. Next. So this is fun. Makes me wonder where, sorry, I'm trying to get a light on so I don't look like I'm in a cave. Makes me wonder where you saw this. It's just kind of cute. But there's also too a lot of reflection. So I think I would love to see like more of the old hag and of Snow White, even though, and I get the sense of the window here where she is, but it's a little bit hard to tell like what you are looking into. Is this a diorama? Is it a full scene? It's really kind of hard. I see a reflection of a face in the witch's cave. I see the reflection of the flag. And so because of that, again, my eye wanders about, right? Like, it's really hard. The nice thing is that Snow White is definitely the most notable thing next to the old hag's nose and the apples. So that does anchor a little bit, but there's other things when you start to look around, like two owls at the top, right? Because of the way the reflection is working. And I'm not sure if pressing if you're looking through glass at it, get the camera all the way up on the glass so that you've blocked out as much ambient light behind you, and that will help with reflections. Next. So this is beautiful. I'm sure it's really lovely when you're standing there as well. Looking up like this, though, does throw it kind of, again, off angle. It's a little bit cockeyed. I think for me, I would have preferred this to be like squared up in this particular case. And right now, the two sides coming up alongside the stained glass windows are at different heights. And you can see that the point of the building is slightly angled. And that's just where you're standing. You're standing to the left of the door instead of the center of the door. If you had just moved like a step and a half to the right, that would square that up for you. I do dig the cemetery in the background. Like, I think the idea of this photo is really interesting. I think I would probably shoot it a little bit stepped back in the slightly wider so you get the bottom of the door. So that I think it would just feel like more natural. I think if you tried also to square this up in post, you would actually lose a lot more than you think. So I don't think that would work. I think it needs to be shot a little bit differently. And I would say, broadly speaking, when doing architecture, there's two schools of thought: crop it in camera or crop it in post. And I'm a big fan of cropping as much as you can in camera. And I think that's good because it'll help you in post know what it was you were trying to convey. And if you took everything super wide and tried to cut into it, you're just not really learning the craft that well. In a case of architecture, though, stepping away, getting, zooming out a little bit will go a long way to fixing and squaring up architecture. So I just throw that out there. If this was taken with a bit more depth to it, you would be able to, kind of affix all of the things that, and you would get the bottom, you get the ground, but you would also be able to fix the walls and straighten it all out and not lose pieces of the photo. So with architecture, it's kind of good to give a little bit more space around our subjects, even though that might be generally counter to what other advice you might hear. Okay. So this is a lovely image. I think the light on her face is a little bit too bright. So I've got a couple of thoughts around it. The highlights up in the window above her head and her face are all too white. They're too bright. So you've lost pixels, and to try to tone that back down is going to gray the image out. So the blues and the periwinkles in here, I love the blue colors and the shades and the band on the hat. The things all stand out very nicely. Now that said, being doors and windows, I do not think this is a picture of a window. I think this is a picture of a woman. So yes, there's a window in the picture, but it really is a portrait. And even if you had shown her face, I probably would have still said it's a portrait, or a reflection of her face in the window. I still think I would say it's a portrait. It looks like a super cool window though. So like I would probably spend time taking this window, getting the scene in the background and making sure I got both windows and the frames of those windows that are open. Because right now you've got kind of one cut off, and that's an imbalance, which makes me uncomfortable. Like others may think, hey, I like it just the way that it is, but the window is to the left. So the building isn't straight, right? Our window is angled left. There's less space at that top left corner than there is at the bottom. And so the whole thing is tilted left, including Our Lady. The ground, where she's sitting, is not level. So there's a couple things that you can do to fix that. But I think broadly speaking, it's a picture of a lady. And I think there's a lot of potential in this picture of a lady, but I think that the highlights are probably too bright. And if you went to go fix them, you might actually get grays instead of just toned down. I'm not sure if the pixels are there for you. Next. So New York, it's beautiful. The skyline is lovely, and it's fun to maybe not New York. Now that I think about it, maybe I'm not in New York. I see not enough water towers. I'm not sure. This could actually be, I feel like that's the Empire State Building though. So anyway, but I love the feel of this, and I love these kind of shots. This is the kind of shot that if you zoom in and start looking in your windows, you'll see all kinds of craziness. That these are the kind of shots that I like to take when I'm in big cities. Yeah, so this is Manhattan. And so I like it. Everything seems straight up and down. As you can see, all the window lines look really straight. So I think that the photographer did a really nice job of translating this, whether they had to fix it in post or it just came out in the shot that way. I think it's been done well. I like that all of the spires are have headspace, right? So even the closest building and the building off to the right, the H&M building, you got the whole tip of the spire of their antennas or lightning rods. I'm not even sure the one on H&M, you could have probably just cropped that out and left the H&M if you wanted, because that's so close to the edge, it's a little bit tight, but that's maybe my only discomfort here. I think some, not quite F22, because there's not a lot of starbursts, but they're definitely maybe it's around F20, F16, F22 will give you those starbursts on those big bright lights. And so that's a nice thing to be able to kind of pinpoint when you're looking around such a busy image. So nice job. Keep going. So this is beautiful, New York from New Jersey, and there's or from a boat, one of the two, I guess. I love this. They call them the lights of Baghdad. When the city lights in San Francisco lights up, that's what they call this reflection. And the shimmering sort of effect of the sunset in the light in the windows. So I think it's really beautiful. So the coloration and the tone is very nice. Again, our buildings are nice and straight. The horizon is moving away from us. So even though the right is further away, you're looking kind of downriver. So it does relate. You probably could bring the right-hand side down just a smidge, and it would still feel okay. Again, not trying to square it up, but just trying to make sure it doesn't feel like things are leaning. But I think by and large, the buildings are handled nicely. It's a really nice image. probably my biggest piece of feedback here is that the tower is cut off. So unless, John, I'm not seeing the whole tower, I mean, like, there's more to this picture that I'm not seeing, which I don't think is the case. One little increment back on a telephoto lens would have brought the top of that tower in. And if you got more water than you wanted, then you could crop the water out later. But I think that the top of the tower is needed. I think it's like cutting off part of somebody's head. You know, that's just part of the face of that building. So that probably the only thing I would suggest is to give a little head space so there's sky around the entire skyline. Next. So this is a cool window, the window kind of door set actually. It does feel like it's leaning though. So this is one of those things that for me, my preference would be to have this squared up, and that's about moving handful of steps to the right and squaring off the building, just because of the nature and the balance of what you're seeing in here. So the arches above, all the windows are there except for the top left window. So trying to square it up or shooting it yet again a bit wider and then cropping it and sort of straightening it to get that, to me, would be a little bit stronger. But it's a nice scene. I wish the scene that was reflecting in the windows was stronger. So like more clouds, like the most interesting one is bottom center, and yet the other ones are kind of just, there's nothing going on. So a person in the window, something in the window, or a better reflection in the window, I think would make it stronger. But I do like the scene, and I think just playing around with it a little bit might be, that'd be kind of cool. So this is really interesting, right? Because these tables are blocking like these doors. I would love to see this whole wall without the tables, which I get. You're in a restaurant or something and you just don't really have that luxury to say, hey, could you just rearrange everything for me? But this is a really kind of cool scene if you could get all the way to the floor instead of on the tables. So I like it, but what I tell people and what I tell myself a lot is there's things that I see in my head, and because I see them and our brains are really, really selective, I might have shot this and cut it off so I didn't see the tables at all if I shot it, or I would have looked at it and said, I know this is really awesome, but I can't get what I want. And so I might not shoot it at all. And what I say is that sometimes things just don't translate after the fact as they did in our head. And I've got lots and lots of examples of that. So this would be one of those things where, if we didn't have the table and we only had a half door, maybe I'd be like, where's the rest of the door? In this case, I can see where the rest of the door is, but I find the table, particularly the salt and pepper shakers and the menus, to be a bit more of a distraction, right? I look at everything and then I go look at what's on the table because I'm expecting to see something else, something more. And unfortunately, like what I see is kind of bright. It's on the edge. I just leave. I leave to the left. So it's. I would love to see it, like I said, without the other furniture in it. I think it's probably pretty cool. But next. So similar to my comment about the other lady, again, I love this. I love the stained glass. I'm not even very perplexed about the corner being kind of cut off since it's nice and dark up there. I kind of go up and I come back down into the picture. I would probably tone down the red on the chair, just because, again, I come off that window, I see her, and then the brightest thing in here is that chair. And so the end result of that is now I'm on the bottom corner of the image and I'm ready to leave. All you got to do is do some burning on that and it would just darken it up. And that would leave me with the window and the lady, which I think is a very lovely photo. I would say, though, I still think it's a picture of a lady and not a picture of a window. So, that's kind of just the challenge that you have when you put people into things, is that as humans, we gravitate to the face, whether that's a person's face or an animal's face or whatever. We're going to look to connect with the humanity of it. And that takes us a little bit out of the theme, which is really about the window of it. Also, she's sharp and the window isn't. And then lastly, I love the light and the rim light on her face, but the bright yellow spot on the top of her head distracts me. I look at her, but again, that's the brightest thing. So when I'm not looking at the chair, I'm seeing the top of her head, and that's not the part of her that we're supposed to be connecting to. So just a couple ideas, and some of that's just about dodging and burning. So I like the photo quite a bit. I'm not sure that it's entirely in the theme, in my opinion, but to let that distract you from the fact that it's a really interesting idea, and I think it's been really well executed as a portrait. Okay. So here we have like a similar theme, right? A stained glass window, sans human. But what we have in this one that is, again, a little bit of distraction, the chairs are nice and bright. So in this particular case, are we really seeing the picture of the window, or should we be seeing people in a business meeting in front of this window? Additionally, the top of this frame, sort of this kind of light lilac color with this really hot bright spot in it, those things become distractions. So if you just cut that out, you would, and sort of make it shorter, I think you would hone in more. And also the brightness to the left, that is just reflection on part of a wall coming in through the window, but I would tone that out because again, I'm gonna bounce around. Now I definitely spend time on the stained glass window, but there are lots of other bright things to look at, and now I start to wander around to see what those things are. So I would tone down the wall to the left of the window. I would crop out the roof of the window, and then even with the chairs, it will definitely make me think like, what is this space and what happens in those chairs? So I think it's a really interesting image if you just kind of score up a few things. And the window's leaning forward, so that goes back to making sure that our architecture is in alignment with reality. So flying, it looks like we're coming maybe back from Ireland or the UK. So this is cool. I love to shoot from airplanes. And I think that, so this is one of those things where the question is, do we sit back from the window and get all of the window? And in this case, that means the outer circle, the rim, and get the wall of the plane, right? Because right now we're cutting the circle off. So you've got, essentially you've created arrows that take us out. So if you look at the arc at the top has two dark arrows going left and right, and the arc at the bottom has two dark arrows going left and right. And so those things become arrows that point the viewer out of the image. Trying to capture that whole oval would help to not create those arrows. So that's about pulling back. The other choice is pushing forward. If you put your camera all the way up to the glass, you're not going to get any of the sort of stuff that's now in the sky to the left of the airplane wing. That's reflection. So if you're all the way up on the glass, you can also minimize artifacts that are going to happen because you're seeing the smudging and the dirt on the window and outside the plane. And we'll still know because of the wing that you were shooting through the window. But then you, again, are you taking a landscape shot once you've done that? So I think to stay with the theme here, you just need to take it a little bit wider. And then lastly, on the outside of this window, I think the image itself, the horizon is off, so the horizon is down on the right. You can square that up, and the image could use some contrast. So it's very hazy, and you should treat that like the picture itself, right? So we would want to add a little bit of contrast, maybe like bring up the blues a little bit so that what we're looking through is the beautiful landscape you want us to see through this window. Next. For some reason, I feel like I know where this is, although I couldn't tell you. It also still feels like Ireland, but I know that I've sort of seen similar scenes. This is very interesting, and I think this is well seen by the artist. So again, we are looking through this little sort of window way. It doesn't feel like a door, it feels like a window, but I do like that we have the headstone in the back. I wish the headstone in the back, though, it wasn't so hot back there. So you have a lot of white light. And I don't mind that it's blurry. I just think that it's a little bit too bright. So if this had come back a little bit in exposure all the way around, or take it as two exposures, one exposing for the rock wall, which isn't too bad, and then one exposing for the headstone, and then blending them. The subject, which is really the headstone, right? We're looking through the window to the headstone, would be more interesting in terms of something to land an eye on. Because right now we just have what could be a block of white, and anything could be back there. So I think exposing it, thinking about it in the idea is really great here, but thinking about it in a minute and like kind of maybe trying to set up an HDR with bracketing, just so you can get all of the dynamic range that needs to be seen here, would help us so that our subject in the back is good, viewable. And then I think that probably if you just tilted this whole image a hair, the window itself would still feel square, but so would the headstone. I can't decide if I want the headstone to be straighter, but that's nitpicky. Next. Okay, we're back to square one. So how many do I get here?
Excellent question. Yeah, we'll do. So we've got, let's see, 4, 8,
11. No,
11,
11, 16.
and 16. So I think that was one honorable mention on 16, I think. Let me pull up the rules. I got them handy here,
Okay.
I think. Here we go. Rules. We have rules. And it's launching. It's launching. Here we go. So for 16, scroll down, scrolling down. Yep, one honorable mention. First, second, third, and honorable
Okay.
mention.
Cool. And is it possible for you to drag the navigation on the left, make that smaller, drag that
Yep,
little
I
three
certainly can.
carrots? Thanks. Thank you. And way to make them all on one screen. Can you do that?
I can make them smaller. And I think that is, hang on a second. I know there's a way to do this.
Oh, you got the top. It said 90%. I don't know where you were. There you go. Okay. Almost. 75. There you go. That's fine. And let's see.
So I made
Where
them
am I
square
here?
instead of proportional.
Yeah, you have to go to the one to the right. Up, right. Keep going. No, right. There you go. There you go. Perfect. So I think top row, far right is going to be number 1. And probably the other city, bottom left, also by Rick. Good job, Rick. Welcome to Advance. I think I'm gonna go with Contemplation, the lady with the stained glass. That one. And then the blue windows.
Okay.
Okay.
So honorable mention is John Roberts. John, you're on mute. Would you like to describe your image real quick? All right, he's on mute, but congratulations, John, on honorable mention. And going to third place, Contemplation's Colors. And that,
Sarah
Hello.
Pennington.
there we go, Sarah. Hey, John, are you up? Was that you? John Roberts, would you like to just describe your image?
I took this about 5 years ago. was in DC visiting my son. We were walking down the street and I caught the sunset in the windows. Just thought it was a pretty striking picture. But yeah, I didn't realize there was all the spots and stuff on it that was the comment on. So yeah, good, all good points. Probably could have stood for some additional cropping as well, but this is 5 years ago. So
Yep, we all advance, and
No worries.
it's
yeah.
great image. Congrats on that. And Contemplation's colors, Sarah.
Yeah, that's at Fairfax United Methodist Church. I discovered that they have these very nice stained glass windows, and since the theme was doors and windows, I dragged my sister out to model for me. I am very frustrated by the fact that the window isn't as sharp as I wanted. I thought I had gotten another picture to overlay and fix the fact that it wasn't, and then I went to edit and I discovered, nope, I did not get that image.
Very
Well,
nice.
it's a very nice
Congratulations.
image, and yeah, and the image of your sister is really nice. Like that's, like I'm not, like I said, there was no discomfort in that. Even the fact that the window wasn't sharp. But yeah, either focusing on each one and blending, or a deeper aperture, right? Like more depth of field would have got you there maybe. But yeah, no, it's a nice thing.
Second place, Sunset Windows by Rick Leduca.
I took that from the Jersey side of the Hudson River. In October, I spent a week up in New York just for photography. So I took probably 1,000 pictures over the course of the week. And this was one of the ones I liked. The way the sun was hitting the windows just popped for me. So that's Lower Manhattan.
Yep. Well done. Well done.
Yep, beautiful.
And first place,
This
Rick.
was top of Rockefeller Center, looking south, obviously. And the building on the left is the newest high-rise in New York. It's got the tallest observation deck. It wasn't open when I was there, or else I would have been up there as well. But it was probably, even though it was October, it was probably 35 degrees that night. And I spent almost 4 hours up there from before dusk till after dark. And I'm glad I got a couple that turned out okay, because it was brutal.
Well
Yeah,
done.
it's beautiful. I've never seen that building, or like it would just certainly, or maybe I've seen it being built as opposed to built. So it's like, wow, am I throwing myself off? I know that's University. I just was like, where am I? And then H&M grounded me.
Yeah.
That I was like, yes, I'm in New York. But yeah, that looks like a place to head up to the top of. That's very
It's
cool.
right next to the Chrysler building, by the way, but it's brand new.
Okay.
Is this the Freedom
Awesome.
Tower, Rick?
No, the Freedom Tower
No.
is the one that's
Okay.
to the right of the Empire State Building, way in the distance. No,
Oh,
the-
Way back. That's the Freedom Tower.
that's the Freedom Tower, which is not called that anymore, but that's the one.
Okay. All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job, everybody.
So now one administrative
Yeah, you didn't
task.
need to make it quite that small, but yeah, there you go.
Okay, moving on to Novice Monochrome. Right, not there. There we go. All right, so I'll breeze through these for a few seconds each.
Thank you. Yep. Yeah, just a second or two.
And we're back.
Okay. All right. So you're going to find I'm very thematic and I'm very consistent. So yes, it's a doorway, but it's really a picture of a lady. a nice picture of a lady. So I don't want to distract from the fact that it's a nice portrait. But again, going with the theme, is it really a picture of a person as opposed to a picture of the door or a window? So I kind of throw that out there. Now, excuse me, I love the sepia tones in this. I like, I actually think that the clothing and the bag, I think that's all handled really nicely. I feel her face is a little bit soft. So I'm not sure what the artist was, where the focal point was, but it might have been her left eye, but her right eye is not in focus. And so I don't know. So that's why I'm not sure exactly where it was, because there should be pretty close to the plane. And if you're at a, 5.6 or so in terms of aperture, you should be able to get nose and both eyes into focus. So depending on where the focal point was, and that throws off a little bit. So I really dig it. And I think it's an interesting photo. I would say that the door frame on the right is tilted to the left because there's more space at the top than there is at the bottom where the door frame comes in. So just be a little bit mindful of, again, squaring that up. It doesn't feel as disconnected or off in terms of the left-hand side, but the right-hand side, it's notable. So it feels like that side of the building's leaning a little bit. And then just be careful of the focus. And then lastly, I would probably brighten her face, like with a brush, just a little bit on the, maybe opening up shadows would get you there, or highlights. Brighten the face up just a little bit, not so much the teeth because they are nice and bright, but her face itself, like from her upper lip up, could stand a little bit of brightness, because right now her shirt is brighter than her face, and so is her hat. So we kind of look around at the clothes and get up to the hat and look at her teeth, but we're not really seeing her face. So a little bit of brightness there would be, I think, helpful. Next. So yeah, lots of broken windows, love old trucks. I think that in this particular case, I feel like I want a little bit more contrast in this image. Also, I wish I kind of had the top of the window. I don't need this bottom left corner. So if you look at a couple things to the left of this, so move your cursor on over to the left, John, that whole bottom panel creates a big arrow out. So that whole line that he's following, not just that, all the way across the door, that's creating down further that way. That's a big arrow, which is, if we got more of the window, that would get you more of that panel. It wouldn't create so much of an arrow. The window, the side mirror bar that you were on a minute ago, that's a direct arrow out to the left. So again, just because of the way we have this cropped, we have this arrow that takes us out, this line that takes us out. And then at the top left upper part, you have a really bright spot. So you have this brightness in the window, and that's fine. But when you really start letting your eye wander, you've got a bunch of stuff going here on the left that takes you out of the image. And either moving your feet or cropping differently are the only ways that you're going to get there. In terms of the picture proper, I think that it's like through the window, again, super bright. So you don't quite see through. And I feel like there could, which is maybe okay, but in the window itself and looking at the steering wheel, I wish there's just a little bit more sort of contrast here. It feels all very flat. The tonality here is very static. So I just think some contrast would help. And that white box above the window on the right, top right, up, straight up to the left, there you go. Also, not helpful. Again, something very bright, very dramatic edges, right? Squares are going to, like circles, squares, triangles, all catch our attention. And as we wander around this image and like check out the inside of the truck, we see a square white box. So the only solution to that is shoot it differently, crop it out, tone it down with burning. So it's an interesting image, and I'm sure this whole area had a lot to see, but there's some very distinct things through the windows. The decking in the back has really straight lines and bright spots, and there's some other stuff going around that maybe standing on the front of the truck shooting towards the back might have given you a different perspective that would take out the corner, take out the box, and take out the decking. So you got to kind of play around with it when you're squaring it up in camera. Next. So I love this idea. this kind of, and I know the next photo, being doors and doors and doors, but seeing through like that is really cool. So I definitely like what the photographer was thinking about here. This front window is pretty square for the fact that, it's rock wall and sort of not meant to be perfect. I really wish that what I was seeing to the other side was more interesting. Like when I finally got through the windows, that there was something else out there besides sort of this other building and yet more windows. I love the little, those little glass things that they're from electric phone tower type stuff. I don't know what they're called. They're insulators, I think. That's what the wires wrap on. Those things are like really cool. I wish maybe that they stood out a little bit more. Like the ones on the left are a little bright. The ones on the right are a little dark. I'm not sure there's a way to do what I'm talking about, right? Because the scene is the scene and there was daytime on the outside of that. But I think that there's a ton to work with here. And I kind of wish it was squared up a little bit so that square in the back sat within the rectangle, but that's kind of just my inner retentiveness. But yeah, great scene. Lots of nice darks and brights. So I think in terms of tonality, it keeps leading you through all the way through all these windows. So definitely the viewer joins you in the journey. Next. So a similar type theme, right? So door to door to door. The difference being here, we're not squared up, so that's part of it. Because there's an archway at the top, you've got these two corners in the top right of the scene. So I don't mind, you've gotten the threshold at the bottom, but those corners are, again, can lead you out. They're not super dramatic, but a little bit more vignetting to darken those down would be the solution to that, because it's just the nature of this architecture. I do wish this was a little bit more squared up, because I'm not really seeing anything. Now, if there was like a painting on that back wall, something that when I got through the doorway, I saw something, I think it'd be more interesting than just the flat paneling that's there. The rug, the floor, the chairs, and the light bulbs and the banister on the left are all very bright. So you sort of lose the allure, like, what do you want me to look at? And then I start looking at the bright spots. Also, whatever the two flecks are, you've got some things on the wall. So the two dots on the wall, I don't know if that's just like artifacts, if it's just bright spots, fixes, clone them out. You've got bright spots on the floor, clone them out. I would probably clone out the light switch outside the doorway and whatever is at the top right of the second doorway up there. I'd probably clone those out too, because they're all shapes that draw us away because they're distinct. And then you don't have the whole chandelier. So it's either kind of the whole chandelier or no chandelier, but having the lights cut off. And also there's no detail there because they're too bright. I think distracts, right? Because you go straight up to the super bright spot. It's the brightest spot of the photo, and you can't really find anything to look at. And then you're on your way out the top of the photo. Next. So this is an interesting area. Like, I like the leading line of the banister up to the window. I like the window itself. Like, it either looks like old glass or snow and rock out there, whatever it is. It's kind of interesting. I wish, and this isn't about the photographer as much as it is going to be about the architecture, that the whole window fit within the door, which it doesn't. But I think that if you look at this, the window is tilting to the right. So again, squaring that frame up, the frame that the window is in needs to be squared, because you have this light spot on the top left and on the top right. You could, once you squared it up, that one on the left would disappear, and the one on the right you could tone down. So I like the idea about this. The stairs are nice and straight, so you would basically, or pretty straight, you draw a horizontal line there and a vertical line on this left door, and that will tweak it right into shape. Both Lightroom and Photoshop, with two lines, you could get this all squared off, and then just kind of deal with if there's any bright spots on the edges that you want to tone down. But you know, by and large, like, I think it's a pretty interesting photo and nicely seen. Lastly, that banister in the front, on the banister in the front, there's the bottom leg. Go down, 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 down there, now down, right there. I would tone that down too, so you don't have bright spots along the edge. That would be true of the upper banister, right straight up from there. I would tone that, go up, straight up, that right there. Next. Reflections in big cities. Boy, I will stop for these all the time. I love shooting them. I love finding interesting ways to see things, whether it's other buildings or sculpture or whatever. So I think this is nicely handled. I think it's well done in terms of its brightness and its darknesses. You get some darker cloud bits up there in the sky. You've got some nice shadows in the buildings below. You go from light to dark, which is what strong black and whites do. Not only is the building with the reflections standing straight up, but all the buildings within the reflections also feel like they're standing straight up. So, that takes some time and energy to either, tilt shift it using that kind of lens or squaring it up as best you can in camera and then fixing it in post. And so this is a good example of how buildings should feel when you see them, that they should just be square, right? Because in real life they are when you're looking at them. It's just how the camera captures it. So this is nicely handled. Just another cool doorway here. I think this is a little bit better as it goes in terms of the triangles. And the reason I say that at the top is because although it's a smidge, right at the top of the arc, you get all of the arc. So it's not cut off. So you can see those keystones that get put in to create the arch, and you can get the bottom. I think a little bit more space at the top would go a long way here, but had that come down and that arc was cut, you'd have your two triangles going back out. So I feel like at least we get the whole arc above the door, and that kind of stops it from feeling like arrows. I do think the door doesn't feel square. So it's pretty straight up and down, but it feels like the right-hand side sits back just a little bit. So it's almost like you need to pull that forward a little bit. But by and large, it's a nice photo. I think the lights are good, the darks are good. You get all the detail in the door. So it's nicely seen and pretty well handled. Next. This is a very lovely scene, just in terms of just what it conveys, a warm, pleasant home, whether it's a current home or an old home that's been set up or whatever. I think the items across the windowsill are lovely. They give us a point of reference, something to look at. Maybe lighting the candle would make this like a wee bit cooler, just to have that little bit of flame in there. The top of the window, the top window and the bottom window are not squared off. And I think that they could be, if you just, again, draw that straight line, get that in sort of pull that bottom left, that area right there, pull that in a little bit, pull it out to the left, just to square it up so it doesn't feel like it's tilting. But I think this is nicely handled. I like the shadows. I like just the side light that it creates on all of our little pieces. Nicely seen. Well done. So here we are back to our dove. And honestly, I think this is so much stronger. So if you think about the other image in color, we were coming from the right-hand side. Now we're coming from the left-hand side. We have a little bit of fall off light to the right outside of the portal on the right-hand side, but I think that's okay. It's not super distracting, but we don't have this like bright leather on the chairs. We do not have the roof light. All we really are looking at is the window. And I actually kind of dig that it is off to the side and not square. So is the bird, the wing a little bit clipped? Sure, but the bird is flying into the scene. I think that's a strong position for the bird. We clearly see that it's a window, and I think it's just taken from an interesting angle. And I like the sort of half moon effect that the wall makes. So I just think this was a nicely seen and well handled. So I think this is, like I said, it's a good example of the difference between the two images. And I feel like this one definitely keeps you looking at the window. Nicely handled. So this is nice, actually. I like this. I think I like this one more than the color version as well. I maybe wish I had the top right part of the window in here. So again, just that little step back, right? That little zoom out. So you get the top of the windows not cut off and the bottom corner of the front of the book, right-hand corner of the book also not cut off, or probably a Bible. It feels like this is a church. But if that had been just a little bit more space, you wouldn't be cutting so close to the edge of the book, and you wouldn't lose the top corner of the window. And I think that would help. But the lighting is handled beautiful, right? We can see through the window. There's a whole scene out there. It's not blown out. We can see that it's a cemetery. And then the light inside the room is very soft and lovely. We do not need to be able to read the words on the page, but there's this really sort of nice soft light coming through. It really kind of tells you where you are and gives you a feeling of peace. So I think this is really nicely seen. This one and the image before it, there are triangles. So if you look at at the back end of the book where the table is here, there, other side, left-hand side, yeah, right there, you've created a triangle. You know, you got to be mindful of those, but there are some times where you simply can't do anything about it. And other than to point out that there are triangles, this doesn't feel like it's pushing me out of the image, because the image itself, the window, the book, everything, the lighting on the inside here is so strong that it's, I'm not catching my eye on that corner and taking myself out. I keep coming back to look back through the window. So this is nicely seen. All right, so neat windows, neat drapes. I think it's nicely seen. I love the trees and the shadow of the tree. You know, kind of gives you that kind of creepy, eerie feeling. The thing again that catches me here is the building's leaning back, right? Everything about this is pushed back, so the roof line is behind the front of this, where your feet would be standing, and that is just about squaring up the image. Again, not squaring it up so you're facing the window square, but squaring it up so that the building comes forward and feels like it's standing up straight. And you can, and where John was there, you can really see that because there's more space at the roof line, at the top of the wall to the bottom of the wall. You can just tell it's leaning back. And so all of those things work against you. And if you squared it up, you'd lose a little bit of that gray sky, which is not a loss. There's nothing up there. And kind of, it would tilt everything back forward. And then you would have to decide how much of the tree do you need over there? How much of the sky do you need? You can make those decisions cropping after squaring. But I dig the lighting on the window and the shadows and the branches and all of that stuff. I think this could be the beginning of a very cool story, like a horror story, something edgy, ghosty going on here. And I think it's nicely seen. I would just make sure the building's standing up. All right, so this one, if you actually take a really good look at it, the wall itself is square, right? So if you kind of run your eye down the far left and the far right, they feel pretty much in balance, but yet the top of the window and the bottom of the window are not necessarily squared up. Could be because we're standing a little bit to the right and we're not squared on. But even in that could be fixed. Again, the same way the walls are squared to the side, you could just draw a straight line, and the Photoshop or Lightroom will also straighten up that horizontal line. So it feels a little bit like askewed in the wall. I don't have any problem at all with the shutter on the right being off angle, right? Because it's kind of like, looks like it's a little bit loose and falling off. So I think it kind of, again, tells a kind of cool, eerie story. So I like the scene. I think the lighting is pretty nice. Maybe could use a tad more contrast just to bring out some of the deeper shadows, make them a bit deeper. But the highlights are good. I think that there's probably a little bit too bright above the window where that paint is all cracked, because it's really distinct. So you kind of look at the window and then up higher, right over the center of the window, right up there. And there's some interest, there's some things to draw our eye up there and start following all these little cracks. Maybe toning that kind of top right-hand half, that whole corner, everywhere where John is right there, down a hair would keep us from getting all the way up and then following those the straight panel lines up out of the picture. Keeps us on the window. So maybe reversing where that brightness is a little bit. Okay, we're back to the front. So we have 11. Nope, 12. Sorry. How many do I get?
I'm telling you, I mean, I'm sorry. My microphone was not on. First, second, third.
Okay. Hmm. So I think I'm gonna go. What order? Yeah, I think I'm gonna do the dove is one. The candles two. And I think the church scene is three.
Number 3, third place, Amy Wykes. Is Amy online? I don't see her. I think I know where this was. I think this was at Primitive Baptist Church in Great Smoky Mountains.
Yeah, okay.
And here we have second place, Sarah Pennington, Candle in the Window.
Yeah, that's Fairfax United Methodist Church again. I was in the sanctuary. I saw it. I had my phone. I took the picture. Did not expect it to turn out that well, but it did.
Yeah, it's really nice. Next time you have to bring a lighter.
A phone camera? What? Oh. What's the
There
best
you go.
camera? The one you have with you,
The
right?
one you have with you.
Yeah.
That's
But
right.
but I'm making a point of it as well. You don't have to have like a quote real camera to do good photography. So well done. And first place. Who is this?
Also
Sarah again.
with the phone. Yay, you.
Fairfax United Methodist Church has a lot of very nice windows. That's all I got.
Absolutely.
All right.
But do you see the point that I was making about the difference? I personally just think this is for the theme. Again, if you were doing something else, if the topic was different, the other photo might work. But for this theme, I think this is a much stronger view of this particular window than the others. I don't know if the other one was yours. I'm assuming it was, but the color one.
Yes, it was. All right. So this one also goes down here, collect. Okay. Moving into intermediate.
Okay.
We'll breeze through these real quick. Move the cursor out of the way.
Can you guys hear those guys talking behind me? Is that getting picked up on my earbuds?
No, I don't hear anything behind you on your end.
Okay, because it sounds like they're in the room with me.
Okay, we're back at the beginning.
Okay, so, oh, thank you, because I was about to make a comment, and I'm sort of glad I didn't make the comment before you did that. All right, so when you see red, you shoot it. That's definitely a rule, and I definitely think that that's what the artist is doing here in terms of, you know, it's definitely eye-catching. But there's also some stuff here that's a real distraction. So all the stuff on the left-hand side, that all that white going on there, the sign, all of that, you could crop it all out. You might not be able to get rid of the sign because of the shadow, but you can definitely like crop out all that white stuff. You just don't want bright things on the edges of frames if it's not pertinent to the photo. And honestly, the bike and the doorway here is what's pertinent to the photo. I also kind of wish that the photographer had stepped back, because the top of this doorway is where all of the interest is, right? In those filials up there. And so we're not getting to peak, and it feels very much cut off. And then lastly, on the right-hand side, again, we're not square to the door, which is maybe okay, maybe not okay. It just depends on the image. But if we'd been square to the door, we could cut out the wrought iron stuff at the bottom, the rusty stuff, the bright plant at the bottom. And really, they're just distractions. So your eye, you can't really appreciate the entire doorway. And so then you start looking around, and I love the bike. So the bike is definitely eye-catching, but then you get down, you start looking, and you're like, there's things on the edge of the frame. And once you're at the edge of the frame, you're done. Unfortunately, that's just kind of how that works. The building in the back behind the tree, also, it's white. So you've got all this darkness right there, and yet there's something bright back there, and your eye will search out every one of those things. That would be true for me of the broken paint where you see wood coming through on the black above the bike. I would clone those out because those are super, super bright in this black wall. And so then you start looking at it. So you look at the whole thing, and now I'm starting to look at peeled paint because that's what's light. So just something to think about when you're seeing it. I think it's an interesting scene, but I think that there was probably a couple of ways to change our perspective and then make a few modifications in post to keep us on the topic, which is the bike and the door. Next. So this is interesting. I've as many times as I've driven through Luckett's, I can honestly say I've never ever stopped and taken a photo. And there's probably multiple reasons for that, but it's definitely a super cute town, and this is definitely a super cute like storefront. It's nice and squared up. I think from that standpoint, the artist has done a good job of making stuff square. Actually like the stuff in the windows, but I find that it's distracting on the left-hand side, the reflection, and that's just the time of day that this photo was taken. The red doorway, again, you see red and you stop and shoot it. I mean, I wonder if like at night, if these lights are lit, what this would look like with a little bit longer exposure. Maybe you'd end up getting street scenes if there's cars back there and stuff like that. But I think it's a neat scene. It's just a little bit flat. I think that there needs to be there's so much light to the edges and around that the door being not as light, I start to wander. So I'm looking at the panels below the windows. I'm looking at the ladder. I'm looking at the peeling paint on the side. I'm looking at the planter box on the left bottom. I'm looking at the words Luckett. So there's a lot of things. I love the roof. I just think the lighting, time of day on this might have been stronger if the light was straight on, or like I said, at night. The gravel is the most consistently lit thing, and but yet there's no interest in the gravel, right? So I think there's a lot of eye wandering in this one, but I do think that there would be something to do here and play with throughout different times of day to see what you came up with. And then I would say a final thought as I was finishing here. I wish that the metal roof on the left had the same, not the same equal, but a piece of breathing space and it doesn't. It touches the edge, whereas on the right, there's some room. If that was just a tad wider and you got some board back there, it would feel a little bit, well, it wouldn't feel cut off, I guess, is the way I look at it. So next. So this is interesting, right? So this, besides being a window, the emphasis here is on the reflection. I wish there were some few clouds out there in that reflection, but it's not bad. Like the tree and the knowing that there's trees and that there's a blue sky out there is sort of interesting. I find it's interesting because it's like, well, is this painted? Is there paint on the window? Like what's creating the white that's in the window? It doesn't feel like it's necessarily on the inside, or maybe it is. I don't know. It's just very weird. So it gives me a lot to question and wonder about what is it that I'm actually looking at. Am I looking in a window? Am I looking out of a window? I find it pretty intriguing. And as that, because of that, you're going to stay with the image. You're going to continue to explore it. So whoever took this and how it's been rendered is well done if it keeps the person looking in. So yeah, nicely handled. Next. So this is very interesting. Also, still a picture of a person, but in a little bit less dramatic way, right? Because we have the whole building, we're seeing, not the whole building, but we have some larger portion of the building. It's not just a person in our foreground, and she's clearly sitting in a window or a door. And I think that it tells a different story about how this temple might be used, how space in this temple might be used. So I think it's a nicely seen image. It's pretty much straight up and down for the fact that it is built of rock, and we're also standing askew to the window we're looking at and to the person we're looking at. I wish her face was a little bit brighter. That, like right now, her tennis shoe, her shoelaces, her shin, her pants and stuff like that, that's really where you end up like letting your eyes rest, because it's so much brighter, and her elbow and her arm and her face. I wish I just could see her face a little bit more, and artificially that could be lit with just brushing some lightness onto her face so that her face isn't so hidden. But I think this is maybe a better, for this theme, a better use of a human in the space than some of the other examples. But yeah, very cool. So this is a nice image. Again, the window is leaning to the right. So some of these things have been leaning to the left, but you can see that there's more space at the top left than there is at the bottom left. You just need to square that stuff up. If you squared up the two sides and the straight bar across the top of the circle there, this would, you're standing straight on. So right now, this all should be square to us. It's not quite. The white spots on the left part of the outer circle, nope, left side, that side, yep, clone them out, because just like dark dust spots in a light sky, white on black is just going to do the same thing. Those are big, bright white spots, and you go right to them. In addition, the spectral highlights coming off of 11:30 noon up there, they're going from the center top to the left. Those are distracting and probably fairly easy to clone out. Then in terms of the actual window and the scene, I really wish that mother and child here were focused. They're not in focus. So instead of really looking at this piece of stained glass or this painting on stained glass, or if it's hard to tell from here if it's all been built with stained glass, I'm looking at all of the other angles and light, because that's not clear. So I think like I said earlier, any kind of face, whatnot, you're going to want that face, eyes, nose, and stuff to be in focus. Next. So this is a trip. I'm gonna say it looks like a composite, because I don't know how else you would get all of these things in the picture together. So with that said, I think it's actually really interestingly done. And the person had the foresight to put the main part of the waterfall like coming down through the two sides of this building and then out the doorway. So I think that's really nicely seen. What I would like to see, my own personal thought here, and the building is straight, by the way, you can see that that's handled pretty well. I actually wish I did not see through the building. So in other words, do this in a way that you have it laid out, but mask the rock out of the glass. Yeah, so like all of that should be whatever the glass looked like in the original photo of the building. I think that might be interesting to see and give a different illusion, right? Because right now it looks more like it was done with opacity as opposed to with masking. So I think this is a really interesting idea. But I think if the windows were solid and the building felt solid, but it had all this nature pouring through it, I think that the thought here would be a little bit stronger. And in real world, I wish I just didn't see the subway and all the stuff that regrounds you back in reality. But that's my 2 cents, and I'm not really sure you could get rid of those things. But yeah, interesting. So this is very cool. As you can see, the window's nice and square, and pretty much the horizontal. The bottom sash is horizontal, which I think matters. The window looks super old anyway, so being a little bit off in each pane is not as much of a distraction as when the edges tilted. But this is a nice example of like seeing into a window and being able to look through it. This kind of almost feels like I might be in New Orleans or something like that, in terms of the imagery that goes through here. And it is, yeah, it's interesting. I could sit here and try to figure it out. I also like that we are seeing through, but we're not getting a tremendous amount of reflection. I have yet to identify the photographer. I'm not getting car headlights. I'm not getting street lights. It's just nicely done. And is that because, and I'm not getting like a big bold sky, like a big whiteout because there's a sky here. Could be time of day. I don't know, but I think this was well seen and nicely handled. So this image is interesting. I think this might have fit a category of silhouette better than it's fitting the door and window. Also, in terms of this particular scene, the person in it doesn't bug me so much because we can't see them, so we're not going to focus on them. We're going to look past them pretty readily. I also do not mind the leading line of the fence that's out there, but the scene in itself isn't that alluring. So what we're really seeing is like tore up ground, not a nice pristine lawn. Yes, that exists, but it exists further into the scene. What we're really seeing is this big bald area right up in front. And you start looking at the weeds and what's down here and what are they building. And so I'm not sure that this conveys exactly what it could if the scene outside the window was different. And I don't mind the sort of mucky paint around the window panes, but there are some spots here, like dust spots or a bird up there in the sky above the building up there. There's some spots above the person. There's some spots on the right-hand side that look pretty distinctive, like I would clone all that stuff out. And I'm not sure if you cut this into a horizontal so that you didn't see any of that foreground and you started with the dark fence in the back, I still think it might work as a picture and you would get closer. You'd be getting from like this part of the person up. I think that would actually be a stronger image. You'd get the same idea that they're looking out over the stuff through a doorway, but you wouldn't see any of the stuff in the foreground that isn't particularly interesting. Next. So similar to our very first picture, although different in its uniformity, right? So the first picture had all kinds of different windows. Some had awnings, some didn't, some were open, some were closed, some had clothing. This is definitely feels like a hotel as opposed to an apartment. The left-hand side is a bit squarer than the right-hand side. So there's definitely some standing up that needs to happen. That line where John is on the left there isn't as bad, but when you get over to the right, you can see it's really leaning back to the right. So the whole building kind of feels like it's falling forward and to the right. You square that up and maybe crop off the top, not all the top, but just above those arches, like so right around where John is there, I think you'd have something really cool going on here because of all the repetitive patterns. So yes, you've got doors and windows, or windows and doors, but you could also use this for like repeating patterns and stuff like that. I think it's a very interesting scene. I'd play with it a little. And I also think that this would be super strong in just black and white, taking all the color out. I think this would be really interesting without the browns in it. Next. So this is looks like an adobe building. Southwest is how it feels, could be anywhere. I think there's a couple inches at the top that don't need to be here, and probably a solid inch at the bottom that could be cropped off, maybe cut this into a square. In terms of the tonality, like I feel like it's very flat, so there's not a lot going on in the what probably looks like sage at the bottom, but that's not very green. It's a lot of muted orange, peachy tone. There's no real, I don't know, there's no real texture. It just feels very flat. And with that, the window also feels very flat. So it seems opaque. There's no reflection of sky. We're not being able to see through it. We can't even really see the pane edges themselves, probably because it's got a screen on it, maybe now that I'm looking at it a little bit closer. But I feel like this needs a little bit more. Like the only real shadows are on the poles at the top. There's like not even shadow behind the plant. So I think that it just needs some contrast, and I think cropped as a square, it might be a little bit more interesting. So this is kind of cool. Definitely another composite. Well, I'm making that assumption. I'm pretty sure this is an upper floor that looks into the sky. I think we're still in probably some kind of a place of worship, and there's the allusion to heaven. That'd be how I read it. It is leaning. So the door feels pretty square, but this pillar feels a little bit off to me. Like it still needs to be stand. Both of them, the left and the right pillar, feel like they're like leaning back and in. I do think the idea is interesting. I would say though, I would probably use a more interesting sky. Right? So it's kind of a bald sky down where the cloud is, and there's nothing really going on at the top part of the door. What about a sunset? What about a sky with a light beam? Something that might scream, oh, you know, like that kind of effect. This sky is, I think it's an interesting idea, but I think the sky itself could be different. And I can't tell, it looks like there's some light spot on the door, and I don't know if that's because of the way this was done, like no, to your right. Up right there, to your right. Go right, John. That door, now go straight up an inch, right there. It almost feels like that's a cloud, or if this was done with a mask, that like maybe the mask is gray there, so you're getting some of the sky into the doorway. So just be careful of your masking when you do stuff like that, so that the illusion continues to hold, because you know that's a super thick wood door, metal door, that the illusion holds. Next. Feels like Alexandria, just at a glance. Could be Leesburg, could be almost any place, but that's what this reminds me of. But it's not really a door and it's not really a window. So it's stairs, and it's a kind of fall theme. And I think that, you know, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it from that standpoint, but I think that there's, you know, some distractions on like what's off to the right of the stairs, the door's cut off, that it's not square, the stairs aren't straight. So I think that there's something here. I just think that it needs to be worked on a little bit to just make it a stronger image. Because right now you've got this kind of cute scene with the pumpkins and the flowers and the stairs, and yet there's some stuff at the foot of the stairs that, you know, you start to look at, like, what is that? Is that a leaf? Is it a cigarette butt? Is it whatever? And then when you get to the top, you've got these white pillars with lines that go up and out, and you don't see the whole doorway. So honestly, as doorways go, if this had been taken further back and you saw the whole porch, the whole doorway, both sides of the railings, the whole set of stairs, I think it would have told us a better story. Also, maybe a door without suite numbers on it, without the no smoking sign. That'd be way too hard to fix because there's reflection in it. But again, I like the idea. I do a lot of this I've done a lot of this kind of shooting walking around in Virginia. I just think that it maybe needed a little bit different perspective. Next. So this is really interesting. I love the distortion of the stained glass in its light on the wall. Probably, honestly, like the first time I've ever seen something like that. I find it really intriguing. It seems like it's a little bit to the left. I feel like if you just torque the right-hand corner of this to the right, it would straighten up a little bit. It just feels a little bit squished to the top, from the top to the bottom. But having seen it, having captured it, having managed that light both coming through the glass and on the wall, I love the stretched out face. Like, that's really interesting. Feels very much like Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel, where he painted a self-portrait of him as skin. That's immediately where my brain went, because it's a like distortion of who the person is in the scene. So yeah, really interesting. Nicely done. So this is really cool, actually. I wish the reflection was a little bit more interesting. Again, one of those things that you can't have everything you want. But that said, I like that the artist put this off into the left-hand third, because that's basically what they've done. If you put the rule of thirds up here, the center of the window is pretty much in line with that, with the line coming down the left-hand side, the left-hand third. It's all nice and square. The paneling is all square. The window is all square. Yeah, it's sort of intriguing. Makes you wonder what the rest of the building is and whatnot. I think the only thing that distracts me, to be honest, in this photo, just as a side note, it's really nitty-picky, is the top left pane, top left corner, that shadow. I would probably clone it out so that it just blended from the shadow below it all the way up, because those are such distinct markings, probably branches of a tree, by the way, that I look around the whole thing and I go to that corner because there's something going up in the corner. So just a thought there, but yeah, very cool. And a puss. There's no way to not be enjoying this. I'm a cat person, so I'll put that out there, be honest about it. Yeah, it's super nice. Like, if that cat's really on the inside and it's not a composite, that's like brilliant. If it's a composite, I'm okay with that too. I like the fact that the windows are all dark, but we're really getting a nice tack sharp cat. I think there's probably a little bit on the edging. It looks like the top of the image is in a little bit, keystoned in a little bit from the outside. Like, I just pulled the two top corners out a hair because it's closer if you look at the bottom of the panes. But other than that, yeah, this is really kind of interesting. The white feels a little bit off, by the way, not the white on the cat, but the white on the window panes itself. That has I feel like it has a bit of a green tint to it. So you might play with the white balance a little bit here, but yeah, very cool. So interesting play on the theme, right? Because there might be a door way down on the left, but yet the whole scene is doors and windows. So I think that's pretty cool. I think this might have been stronger as an actual pano, though. Like, I think it's a fascinating wall, and I would love to like get up on that and really see into it. But I also appreciate that the artist grabbed the whole thing. So from right to left, I would like probably crop in onto the brick so that you didn't get to the outside of the building. Just that little bit, yeah, so you can see past the building, but the illusion would be stronger if it seemed like the building went on forever. So if you just cropped it in just a hair so you are on the building, I think that would be really interesting. And I won't be tempted to go see what is that bright thing right where the arrow is right now. What's that bright thing in the background? I won't even look at that because I won't be able to see past the building. So I would do that in terms of left to right cropping. But I would say that all the grass in the front, I don't care about it at all. I don't, if it was all kind of bright green, I might yet feel differently, but you've got this like dark side on the left foreground, brighter on the right foreground. There's a lot of grass. There's nothing there. So if you cropped up and gave yourself what might be in real life 10 feet away from the building, not even that far, a little bit further down, John, a little bit further down. Probably right around there. If you cropped all that off and just made this a pano with this really cool sky, clouds in the sky and everything, I think it'd be a little bit stronger. Right now, there's so much going on in the grass. There's so much of it. It just pushes the whole building away from us, and the building is definitely really interesting. So very nicely seen to have captured it. So this is cool, you know, looking in, wondering what restaurant we're going to, you know, where are we, what are we seeing? I wish the plant, this isn't on the photographer, but it's on the restaurant, was a little bit more vibrant. The plant does look like the ground looks like it's leaning. So if you look at the pot looks askew and it looks like it's leaning down, like on a hill. Maybe it is. The doorway though feels straight. The things beyond the doorway feel straight. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting thing. And like I said, it leads me to go like, ooh, where were we going? What were we having? What's beyond the doorway? I think there's a lot there that's kind of interesting. And I think you could also trim this one from right to left. I don't know that you need the whole planter. Maybe trim it so that you're getting rid of the open spot in the white paint. Yeah, right about there. So we're not seeing even the downhill side of it, just kind of leans in. There's a lot to the left where there's nothing there. So you got to remember that negative space is only worthwhile when it really creates part of the image. So if you think about the window with all that big paneling, yes, it was a big negative space, but it still felt in balance. Here we have a lot of space above the door and a lot of space on brick on the left, and you could probably just crop it all in a little bit and kind of get away from that negative space, which isn't adding particular value in this case. So, anyway, next. So this is nice. I like the, I don't mind the crop of this. I don't mind that it's cut. It's nice and straight. The red wall's definitely an attractant. It might be a little bit off if you look at the bottom pane. It feels like maybe it's a little high on the right, but not substantially. The plants look like they're nicely in alignment. I feel like we see a little bit of the shadow of the photographer, but it's not super distracting. It looks like they've got like a white sweater, a white coat on, lighter color. The only thing you do about that is dress always in dark, but that's not always going to fix it. It's minimal. But yeah, it's a nice scene. It's a cute scene. And maybe a little bit of vignetting so that you don't, so that you stay on the plants as opposed to having the whole scene be lit in about the same tonality would help a little bit here. But yeah, nicely seen. So here we are back to our bike and our doorway. And I don't know if this is the same artist. I don't know if it was the friend of the artist. I have no idea. But there's a couple things that are different here. In this particular scene, you have the whole doorway, you have the filials. You know, there is a triangle created by that roof line up to the plant, but it is what it is. I mean, it's not super bad. Also, the second lantern is here. So in the very first image, the lantern on the left wasn't hanging and the bike was at a different angle. I think in all the way around, this is framed better for what, in my opinion, this scene has. I'm getting to see the whole door. I'm getting to see the whole door frame. I've got balance between the two lanterns. The bike is facing out where the bike in the first one was facing in, but you know, that's not the end of the world to me. I don't have as much gravel. I probably have about ½ an inch too much. I could probably crop a little bit off the bottom here. Just right, yeah, right about where you are. Just don't need it. Bring the whole thing a little bit forward for the viewer. But I just think this composition of the scene is better handled. We don't see peeling paint. We don't see that white stuff on the side. We don't see the wrought iron on the left. This would probably be how I would think to frame it when I was standing there. I would say that on the front tire of the bike, off that little pad, there's a red something in the gravel. I'd clone that out because it's red and you kind of go from door to bike to red dot now. Okay. I think this is leisure world, Jeff. I think you're thinking that too. So anyway, this is cool. I like the reflection. It's nice and straight. I think it's nicely handled. It certainly feels like a much taller building than 11 stories. So I think it's kind of well done. You still have the sky creating a triangle, but I don't think it is as dramatic in terms of how triangles have been in other imagery with the buildings, because there's this like little indent at the top. If the building had kind of gone all the way out, you would have had a real triangle of sky, but just that little arc in it gives you the feeling of the sky, the sky continues off to the left. On the first pane on the right, the bottom pane on the right, there looks to be like a scratch in that window, and I would have cloned it out because, again, it's sky and it ends up having the feeling of a dust spot. But other than that, I think this is nicely seen, and I kind of dig how it tapers off in the actual building, and yet the feeling of the reflected building or window set of windows looks pretty straight. So it's an interesting play visually. So nicely handled. Yeah, well done. Now we're back.
Here, I'll get out of that display. Let me give you some more real estate.
Thank you. So we have 7, 10. No, we changed something. Yeah.
That's
So 8.
4, 8, 12, 16, 17, 18, 19. Was that 20? Either way, it's more
I
than
think it's
17.
20.
Yeah, so
Yep.
it's more than 17, which means 2 honorable mentions.
Okay. I think the stained glass dead center there is 1. I think right. Let me look before I speak. There's a lot of these I like. I like the lone window. So also now center. I like the cat. Next. I want the voodoo. So, right, yep. And I will take the red door and bike bottom left. Nope. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think I will. Yeah, that's it.
Honorable mention number 1, which is not showing up. Why is that? Oh, there we go. Elizabeth, I saw you online.
Yes, I'm online, John. Hi. Yeah, so this was taken at Luckett's, and it was a slightly overcast day, and just the right door just called to me. So yeah.
You say if you always shoot red. And next, Jack Brennan.
Yes, that is New Orleans, a window in a store that had a lot of interesting stuff in it.
Very good. Next up, number 3, Beth.
Yes, so
Is that Milo?
that's Milo.
Hi, Milo. I heard Milo. Milo just said hello too.
Yeah, he joins me on all my calls. So I was sitting outside working. He was sitting inside, looking really cute, looking at this, wanting cicadas. That's what he was watching, all the cicadas that were out. And yeah, so this is actually with my iPhone, where I very carefully took out all the reflections that were in each of those panes. So that's why all the white still looks a little weird, because I was trying to get all the reflections out.
Well done.
Well, pretty well done to get all the reflections out and keep the cat in. So that's impressive. Good job.
And next up, Tim Pennington. I saw Pennington down at the bottom. I had to figure out, all right, one of you.
Yeah, so that's part of the Manassas National Battlefield Browner Farm, I believe it's called, off of Pageland Road in 29. So I just was walking around one day last winter during the pandemic and saw that, and it's like, that's kind of cool. So.
Did you know what the themes were going to be for this season when you took it, or?
No, I was actually thinking of it for the win list or the.
No. Yeah, negative space was what you shot it for, and then ended up placing here. Well done. All right. And first place, right? Beth, again.
Yeah, so this is at the National Cathedral. And I also loved, as you can tell by the name, Distorted Reality. That's what I love, that it kind of looks like an old woman in the reflection, but it's very clearly a man in the actual window. And for a long time, I stared at it going, is that really the reflection of that, what I have in the picture? Or was it another part of the window? But it really was. So
Stained glass Rorschach.
Yeah,
huh?
that's it. Yeah, exactly. It's exactly right though, because you're looking at it, you're like, that doesn't look anything like what you would have assumed the distortion of the guy in the window, right? It totally
Yeah.
looks like a face with two eyes and a nose and a mouth looking at you, as opposed to the side of a head. It's very trippy. Yeah,
Yeah.
very nicely seen.
Yeah, this was just for anybody like during like January and February when the sun's really low and you get these awesome reflections at the National Cathedral. I'd highly recommend it for anyone. It's amazing. It's just everywhere, all the light and the colors.
It's
Okay.
almost like there's parts of the pillars in the National Cathedral during, like you said, January, February. I think it'll go into March as well, where it almost looks like a disco. There's so much color bouncing around inside the cathedrals. It's really cool.
All right. Moving on to monochrome.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to blow through them really quick? Yeah, thank you. Okay, I guess we should have warned people. Like you got to go backwards. You've gone all around. I like to give feedback, so I will apologize to you that you're all still here. I'm not really fast at this. I like to think about what it is and tell people what I think, and I want it to be really clear when I'm done, like why I thought what I thought. So anyway, so these are window frames, right? This is a bunch of windows without panes, or it looks like the panes are gone. So it's really the framing of the windows. It's really interesting. I like the peeling paint. I like the scene. I think the only distraction, well, it's like maybe two distractions here for me that draw me away from what it is I'm actually looking at. The thing on the right, which looks like a piece of a frame or a frame at a different angle, being that it's bright, like the rest of the image takes you out of the image to the right. And on the left-hand side, whether that's a door or the wall they're leaning against, that creates a triangle that is bright and takes you back out to the left. So again, it's very hard to do things that are squared without getting triangles in the scene, but you want to kind of just be aware of them and try to account for them. So partly it could be how you crop, partly you could clone it out. You could stretch this up to the, kind of isolate that and pull it out to the left, darken it with some burning touch-ups, anything to stop these things from being bright and taking the viewer out to the edge. And also the tag above the window set, I would get rid of that too, because again, it's at the top of the frame, at the edge of the frame, and is, there you go, over to the left right there. It is such a distinct rectangle, unlike the shadowed maybe doors that these are leaning against. That thing is very bright and really directing us out. So look around your edges and just try to confine the viewer into your image. And I think that'll just make them a bit stronger. But by and large, I mean, this is a neat scene, interestingly seen, makes you wonder, again, where this is, what it is it an antique place? What's the story behind the lives of these windows? And so, yeah, well done. And I like that there's some brights and some nice dark shadows. Shadows are meant to be dark, so don't fear them. Next. All right, so we have a little garden shed here. It's not so much, again, within the theme, but there's a door here and it's a kind of a doorway, but it really is just about the shed here. I do like the vignette. To me, that is, it might be a little bit strong on the line, just a little bit more feathering there would be maybe good, but it doesn't allow me to venture too far from what you want me to look at. And that is to explore the garden instruments that are inside this like doorway. So I think it's nice. It almost makes you wonder, like, what would this be like in color? Are these all different? Is it all greens? Are there flowers in here that I'm not seeing? But it makes you wonder, like, where are we? What are we looking at? You know, whose space is this? What's the story of the gardener? So yeah, I think it's a nicely seen thing. I wish personally that instead of a building in that top right corner, it was just more greenery, right? Like, I think that becomes a bit of a distraction because, again, rectangles, you know, hard lines will take you up to that corner and then you start like wondering what that building is. And really, we don't really care about that building. We want to stay right here. So next. So this is cool. Again, I think on the left-hand side, the right-hand side feels pretty equal. Left-hand side, the straight bar coming down, the straight piece of the window down, it's closer on the bottom than it is on the top. All you got to do is just give that a tug in skew and to pull that straight, and the rest of this thing would come into alignment. But I really dig the distortion. It feels like a dolly, you know, painting where parts of it almost feel totally normal and then other parts of it feel completely odd. So I think it's nicely seen, and it makes you wonder what's making those big bubble distortions and why are those window panes different than the ones right next to them. So yeah, very interesting and kind of eerie. So it's a cool photo. Another beautiful reflection. I actually really like the reflection here. I like that we kind of see into it. We're not seeing cars, we're not seeing signage, we're just seeing all forest. So like, where is this building? And you know, where is it that it can only be reflecting nature and yet be so modern? I think that with all other things, the triangles that are created at the top, like the way the lines are, because the building is back from us, is there a way to minimize it? And the answer might be flat no. It might be that we just, again, use this vignette to darken it. But it's one of the hardest parts of taking pictures of architecture, right? Is to try to minimize how windows create these weird triangles. So maybe just making those panes darker so that we don't get out there to the light and have corners. But yeah, it's a cool image. I wish I could maybe see more in there, by the way, like just it all sort of comes together at the bottom and it's a little bit hard to differentiate, but maybe just like with a gradient, darkening up the blacks only would give those trees a little bit more definition at the bottom and we'd see further into the forest. But it's a cool scene. I'd have to play with it. So cool building, don't know where it is. Feels pretty straight, probably could use a touch of straightness on the left-hand side. The right looks really straight. The left, you could tell in the brick pattern by the pillar that there's more at the top than there is at the bottom. And that has to do with the fact that I would want the whole filial too at the top. So I think this is about bringing the corner in as opposed to bringing the top out. Yeah, but it's a neat building and there's a lot to look at here. It's a little bit flat, so it's hard to get all of the texture, particularly in the brightest pillar in the center. I would probably maybe add some clarity, something like that. I'd have to play with it because you don't want to emphasize the cars in the bottom and stuff like that. But there's some things over there that catch your attention. I don't mind the 1341. but the words actually are a little bit distracting because I'm trying to read them, and then I stop looking at the rest of the image, which is pretty cool. So next. I don't even know where this is, but it's a super interesting building. It makes me like, ooh, I need to go there and play with that and see what I can shoot with it. So I love the building on the right just because it's something that I don't think I've ever seen. I will say that all the buildings are leaning to the right. So the brightest building being in the dead center, but also you can tell, again, and John went right to it, the edge itself is where you're going to find these things and figure out how to fix them. But even the back building, which is a bright building, so you've got this cool building, this bright building, and the one in the back, it definitely feels like it's leaning to the right. So just needing to kind of straighten it up. In and of itself, all the different forms of architecture and everything, and all the different windows, it's it's a very interesting scene, and I think that the fact that somebody stopped and saw it is really cool. I like our two people in the bottom. It kind of gives you, a lot of people, and I'm one of them, used to work very hard to keep people out of my photography, but what I learned over time was that they really provide scale. So those two ladies in the bottom by this building, thankfully you got them before they got to the pole. That would have been something to be talking about, but like they're before the pole, but they give you real scale for the dimensions of these buildings, particularly this really interesting architecture one. So next. There's got to be a creepy story behind this place. It definitely feels abandoned, and yet there's a couple of doormats right in front of these doors. There's like, well, are there people really here? The branches coming in at the word office is good and creepy. I would probably darken that little white corner in the top left, and I wish you got the bottom of the doorway and the bottom left. Just get the rest of the threshold in there. Maybe that tore up ground would be a little bit interesting to tell more of the story, like just lengthen it a little bit. But the image of it in and of itself is really interesting, and it is square. So both sides of this first door are straight. So even though we're on an angle and we're looking down a row of doors, the photographer, the artist here, squared it up or shot it squared, so it has a good feeling around that. The building doesn't feel like it's falling forward or back. And then lastly, get rid of the bottom right-hand corner, which is a little black arrow leading out. Yep. All you got to do is clone it to be more the cement color, and you don't need to cut it. You just need to take the cement and use it to clone that little corner out, and you wouldn't notice it. Just look like the leading line. Next. All right, so this is Nichols Hardware, which is kind of cool. It's an interesting scene. Again, it's doorways and windows. The guy with a bike is kind of interesting. Creates a little bit of tension with the person looking out of the scene. That's interesting because you gotta wonder, what are they looking at as opposed to what are we looking at? So that's kind of cool. The building is leaning back, and you can see that because of primarily on the left-hand side is what makes that stand out so dramatically. But you know that the front of this building is square, and yet both of the angles of the bricked building, it keystones in. So again, I want that to stand up. But I would also be really mindful, always look at what is on the edges. So we have a corner at the top left. We've got a one-way sign cut in half. That is one of those kind of things where we know what those things are and what they look like. And so it stands out when you only see part of them. So if you stood this up, you got rid of part of that one-way sign, even if you cut like half that window on the left where it says more items, ask for help, even if you just kind of cut to there and had your scene really be this right-hand side, I think that would still work. You've got this one little partial doorway or window way on the very right-hand edge, the dark spot over there. You've got some piece of bracketing at the top above that. All of these things on the edge of our frame, just, we get to them and then we're done. We're like, okay, what else is here? And we start looking around the edges. So I think just squaring ourselves up to this and maybe composing it slightly differently would make it a stronger image, but and definitely standing it up. And if you stood it up, some of these things that are distractions would actually by definition just disappear. So just because they get pushed out of the frame. So this is interesting. because the arm is really interesting here to me. Most of the time when we see old trucks like this, 50, 60 style trucks, the last thing you see in it is actual person. So it makes me wonder, it's like, wow, did that get composited? Is that actually somebody's truck and it's really like well taken care of and it's only been geeked out by process? Like a grunge my pick kind of thing. I just find it very fascinating. I like the hubcap being really bright. I like the bright spots. I like the fact that we can see into the window of the door and that there's a person in there. And again, there are bright spots around that my eye wanders to, but there's nothing so egregious on any of the edges that I don't keep following it around and checking things out. So nicely seen and creatively processed on this one. There's one slight disconnect, and that's the bumper from the front of the truck, and that's just part of the process, whatever filter went on here. So if you see it, there's like a bright edge of the bumper down, 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 forward, stop, forward. Keep going forward, right there. So that is a piece of chrome. It seems disjointed. So it's a kind of a bright spot that gets a little bit lost because you don't see it really coming back around the front of the car. Maybe just slightly toning that bright spot down, but otherwise the rest of it, yeah, just wander around and check it out and wonder what the scene is about. So this certainly feels like a doorway, right? But the thing is we're not seeing really the whole doorway. We're seeing the panel with the cross. And so it's not that it's bad. It's just that it's just not that interesting to keep me here as it goes. Like I see these like white spots of paint. I want them cloned out. I want the door to be pristine, or I want it to be completely ratty. It's neither. I don't get to benefit of the reflection in the windows. The handle itself is not that amazing. It's not cracked open where I can see into this area, into this barn, maybe into this house, into like whatever's in there. It's really, this is just a cross. And so I would argue it's not really even a door, even though it's part of a door. So I would think that there might be some other compositions of this door that might be stronger, particularly as it goes with the theme. Otherwise, I mean, it's a nice black and white, and it's got nice blacks and it's got whites. It's just not, there's just not a lot here to keep the viewer engaged for very long. So next. So door, I kind of appreciate the fact that this was a play on the theme, right? We think doorways or doors, and I don't know, I think most of us think buildings, but it's a car door. I don't mind that I see into it, although I maybe mind that there's a white, very bright lighter object inside the window right there. That I wonder what it is, but it's also not of interest, and it ends up pulling me off of the handle and the rest of this really cool, rusted out paint. But if you cropped it out, it wouldn't feel the same. So I think it needs to be there, but I'm not sure. Like, it's just one of those things where, again, sometimes perspective matters. If we stood up a little bit higher and got maybe a little bit more at the top, that might be different. I'd have to play with it. But I think it's nicely seen, and it's a nice play on the theme. So next. So another stained glass. I don't know if it's the same stained glass. I don't know if we're still in the National Cathedral or just in another place of worship. But I do like the, kind of spectral highlight being at F22. I think that's an interesting play on it. It means that the photographer stopped and thought about how to shoot that and how to create that burst image. I think there is a lot of negative space here that's not necessarily going to add to this image. That makes the window too small. It makes the pieces of the window too small. We can't really look into what those pieces are. I mean, I feel like I see some sunflowers and maybe a bear and maybe a deer, but the rest of it becomes almost not readable because it's so far away. And I think that I probably struggle a little bit at the very top of this window. There's this little bitty arc at the very top that takes me up, and it kind of is a light like that points out at the top of the frame. I really like the rest of it. So I think there's a bit too much negative space. We could crop it tighter, and maybe one step to the side, you might get rid of that, or maybe make it more dramatic so it really felt like part of the window as opposed to the little sliver. So it's like diminish it or exaggerate it just by a little bit of movement. But, you know, I think the idea here is really nice. I just feel it's a little bit too far away. I feel like we're seeing Milo again, but if it's not Milo, that's okay. He just looks like the same kitten. Really interesting photo and nicely captured. Again, that it almost feels like a painting. The one paw forward, you know, the kind of the intent look for the cat. You definitely know you're looking through a window or through a doorway into the house because you can see the screening and everything. Nice and squared up. I just think it's really beautiful. Like I said, I feel to me it really screams out painting more than anything, more than a photo. But yeah, very cool. So looking through a doorway, we see lockers. You can tell it's a school. It looks like there's a school seat here. The lights themselves are not necessarily bad. I think actually the reflection of the lights, the one in the bottom left, top pane, bottom left corner, those are a bit distracting. The leading line of lights going into the frame, though, doesn't bother me as much, other than there's no detail there because they're so bright. And then you've got the photographer, so you do see part of the photographer taking the image here. So there's some things to look at, and there's some things that kind of become distracting. The window or doorway that we're looking through to is also not straight. So it feels kind of straight at the top, but it's back on the right. So there's a little, like the bottom right corner and the top left corner are askew. So again, squaring this up a little bit in post would help with some of these things and kind of not throw the building off a little bit. But you know, it's an interesting idea, and I think it's something to play with, but it's a little bit flat on the inside, and I think there's a few parts of this reflection that are a little bit distracting, but would be really hard to kind of fix, right? There's something you could do about it other than shoot it in a way that you don't pick up all that stuff. So this is cool. I like the wood, I like the stone. It feels very stand up, so it's very straight, even though we are looking at a round building and an angle that goes back. Kind of makes you wonder where this person is. I like that there's some darks, some lights. I like the textures. So I think it's really well done. I'm intrigued by what this might look like in color, because you wonder, like, are the bricks different colors? Are the reflections of the plants, or the inside or the outside? Is it green? Is the metal on the upper window, is that all patina? Does it got a color to it? So I wonder what color would look like, but I think that the black and white really accentuates the textures, which is very interesting. So I makes me wonder where I am when I'm looking at this. Am I traveling? Is this somebody's barn, house, whatever? So very cool. So this is cool too. I like it. I like the weeds up in the front. I like kind of what's going on inside. We can't quite see in. I kind of wish we didn't have the harsh shadow. Like, again, this is a time of day thing, but we know it's part of the roof line. It's not in the days. It's a little bit off, but it could just be, I feel like it's a little high on the right and a little low on the left. That could be probably straightened up. And I will tell you, at some of these things, this building could very much look like this, but it's how we present it. So that doesn't feel like we shot it askew. So that's just something to think about. Even though it might very well be off in real life, doesn't mean we can't square it up. So it doesn't look like it was us who made it off. But I like it, and I think it's interesting. I like the fact that the weeds are kind of all going to the side, and again, makes you wonder where this person is. Is this place abandoned? Is this somebody living here? I mean, there's a whole story that can be written, and that's the idea, I think, in photography, is to tell a story or keep the person guessing and wondering and wanting to explore more. So next. Also, a cool image. I liked it when I went by the first time. I feel like I want that shadow in the back to be a little bit more shadowy. So that area right there to be a medium tone. So the door's nice and dark. I think the wall here in front is very comfortable. The highlight on the floor of the sun, too bright. So that should have been our point of exposure, to be honest, so that we didn't lose any detail in the cobblestone in the doorway, like inside the door. And by toning that down, we tone down that shadow, and you would really get this sort of play of light going back into the image. But it's a cool scene. And again, you know, where are you? Where can we go see this? And what's around the corner? And what's through the doorway with the light? So I think it's really interesting. I just think it's a tad bright on the brights. All right, so this is the first time we've seen a window like this. I mean, we've seen windows, actually, we saw a couple with blinds in them, but the first time we've seen drapery like this and looking out a window in this way. So again, somebody who's taking the theme and kind of turning it on its head and doing something like different. It's interesting, and the light and the lines and the color play and the shadows are all kind of cool. It does feel like the windows, again, leaning back. You know, we want that pane to stand up and the drapes to hang straight. Right now, they feel like they're a little bit back on the top. So I just straighten it up. But it's interesting, and I'm curious, because it's black and white, we can't really quite see what these extra panels are, right? This round panel in the right, and it looks like that's got a window. Like, that panel looks like it's a house, yeah, there, like those are also windows. And I think that in black and white, we're not really able to pick that up, but in color, that might stand out in a different way. It might be distracting. You don't know until you see it. But I do think that, you know, somebody was keeping their eye open when they were looking or thinking about this theme, or when they captured this. So I like the light play here. It's kind of very interesting. Just another cool set of doors. I like the texture. You know, I think it's nicely seen. It is a little bit, almost all too textured. It's a, again, it feels flat, even though flat's not really the right word. I don't have a better word for it. I think if you cropped it down just to get past those bars that go up above the door. So if you just made that the line, like right there where John is, I think it'd be stronger. It would kind of keep you down. Like what happens now is you look at it, you get up there and you see these little light bars that take you out of the frame to the top. Just crop them out. You still have a lot of brick to work with here, but I think it's nice. I think the photographer did a good job. I would clone out whatever that is in the bottom right-hand corner. That white frame that we don't see, it's probably a window. But if you just use some of the bricks to clone over that, then again, right now you have a white line that's making a corner in the bottom right corner. So just kind of make it all uniform so the eye doesn't go down there. Those couple things that I think would keep me in the photo a bit longer. So, and we're back.
3, 6, 10, 12, 14, 16,
16 or more.
18, 19. Yep. So we got 2 honorable mentions.
Okay.
Let me give you a little more space here.
Okay. Well, I have to say, like, from a catch my eye and want to keep me in there, I'm going to have to go with the cat. Not just because I'm a cat lover, but just because I just think that that's really just nicely handled, and the light and everything on the play in the face is really nice. So that's one. Let's go with the truck on the left bottom. Yeah. Bottom right, the hidden treasure one there. Yeah, great. The dolly like one, 6 to the right on the top. Mm-hmm. And third from the right on the second row. Yeah, that one.
Okay. So starting here, Carolyn. Carolyn on? There she is.
Yeah, I'm here. I was trying to unmute. This was actually at Barnstormers. It's a brick silo next to a barn.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, I just happened to turn a corner and I was like, it just kind of caught my eye and took my breath out. So
Yeah, it's very neat.
Confused about which one was in front until I went right up there to the very corner.
oh, I can't even see that from here.
Yeah, it kind of gives me a clue.
Are
that the
you
one in-
saying that the brick is in front? Is
Yes,
that what your take is?
the brick is in
Yes.
front.
I have another
So
shot
I
that.
would,
Yeah, I have another shot that's further out where you can see the ground. And I took one that was tighter, and the tighter one just kind of gives that Escher illusion that I kind of thought was really cool. So, but yeah,
yeah, and I would have told you the brick was in the back. So that's very, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree when John points that out, but it's like, if you look at the bottom window, it totally feels forward.
Yeah.
So it's very cool.
because
Yeah.
the bottom window is actually it is green, and it's actually a reflection of what's behind that silo.
Interesting. Good job.
Interesting. Yeah, very
Thanks.
interesting.
I would have named this Funhouse Mirrors. And actually, this one, I did get the artist, and if you're online, speak up. I
it says
unfortunately I left my
Ken.
notes. Yeah, that's right.
It says Ken right under the word keyword.
Oh, I did put it in here. Good. Sometimes I surprise
don't see him
myself.
online.
Ken Wilcox? No, he's not online. But yeah, Ken Wilcox did this one. And Greg, I did see him online earlier.
I'm still here.
He's
Okay.
on the third hole.
This was actually shot out on in DC over in the U Street neighborhood a while back. And what's funny about this, Denise, is I actually had it cropped in a square, and I looked at it, and I had gotten rid of the stuff at the top, but I got rid of all the bricks, and I really liked the bricks, and I said, "Oh, to hell with it." Went back to
No,
the-
you know, I like it. I actually like the crop quite a bit. I would just take out the little bars at the top because they end up being little, like, you know, lines out of your frame. And then the thing on the right, it's just because it's bright white. Like if it wasn't white, that would be less of a distraction. It's just that it's because it's a bright white frame. But yeah, no, I think your choice to go landscape on this was quite good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And you do a great job. You really do.
Thank you. I know people are probably like snoozing, ready to go to bed. I apologize. I know it's later for you.
Now, how about a
but I
glass
get
of
into stuff
Chardonnay?
and
Glass of Chardonnay will make it work better.
Yeah. Apparently, Greg was
Excellent.
snoozing until I called his name. Just
That's
kidding.
right.
Just kidding.
That's funny. And I love
Next
that
up.
hole that's out in Pebble Beach, right, Greg? Your photo behind you. Your photo.
You got it. You got it. It's a dream.
Yeah,
It's
there
a
you go.
bucket list.
Yeah, I've been there. I've not played it, but I've gone and watched the AT&T out there. All right, sorry, my bad. Go on, back to this.
Next up, Patricia.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi,
Well,
Patricia.
first of all, thank you. I actually shot that on Monday at Bosque del Apache. I just happened to turn around and saw that go by and shot that. So I actually just got it in under the wire. But I didn't even see the arm in there until I was playing around. And I just was messing with the sliders and whatever, and it came up with that effect, and I just liked it. Thank you. But
Yeah,
yes, it was
it's very
being
cool.
driven by, and I wish I could have gotten the driver in the window because he was some old guy with a beard, probably didn't know his truck was old. I don't know. So,
Yeah, but I like this. You know, this actually is there's very much more mystery in the way that you got it with this person, this passenger, as opposed to the driver, even though the driver probably was quite the character. And, you know, I don't know what days you were there, but Jeff was in Bosque, came home on Sunday. So
I just got home yesterday. So
yeah, but you drove, right? Isn't that what I saw in your post?
oh no, flew in.
Oh, you flew. Okay, so you were probably out there at the same time. Yeah, Jeff was out there. Just
I
last
swore
week.
at one time I thought I saw him.
You probably did.
I think I
You
did.
did.
And I thought it looked
Oh,
like
that's
him,
so
and I
funny.
thought, nah, because I didn't see you. So I did see him.
Yeah,
I
you
think
did see him.
I
That's
think
so
the
funny.
sunrise shoot. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
So,
Okay.
Yep.
Next
Well,
time you're
thank
gonna
you.
have to tap him on the shoulder.
Yeah.
In first place, Beth.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, that's Milo.
It's just
Frankly,
nicely done. It really feels portraiture. I mean, like a painting of him. I don't know if
Absolutely.
it's because you did something to it, but boy, does it look like strokes. It's lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the screen makes it gives it that canvas effect, and it really does look like a portrait of the cat.
Yeah, that's what I liked about this one too, is I thought that the screen gave it a unique texture. I actually thought whoever the judge was going to be was going to say that the eyes were soft because of the screen. So that was my hesitation about putting it in actually. So, but thank you.
Yeah, no, he's quite lovely. Yeah, you're welcome. All right.
Good. All right. So let me move this down to best in show real quick. And experienced color. We'll just breeze through these real quick to first go through.
So just, you can stop there for a second, go back. Okay.
That one?
No, forward. Not that one. Okay, so I'm just gonna say that's mine. So I'm obviously not gonna judge it, but you know, it stayed in here, and like I said, I was a stand-in for the judge. So just so you know, when I don't talk about it, it's because it's mine. So next.
Okay, we're back to the beginning.
Okay. Yeah, so this is really interesting. Clearly photographers, and I like in fact, actually, a couple of people look familiar, oddly enough, and that they're probably not. But anyway, so it's interesting, and I like the illusion, like the kind of duplication of people. So like there's two people in hats, the guy in the middle with the glasses, there's two of him, the guy on the far left, two of him. So it's a really interesting kind of play, the way the reflection works on this. We can't really see where they are, and that's also interesting. I think maybe, man, I don't know, like I actually think you don't need the top, right? So there's not like a bunch of clouds or interest or something going through the top of this reflection of the sky. So if you crop that down so that you got right below on the right-hand side, right where the brown is, and just cut right across, that I think would be stronger. One, you get rid of that weird highlight in the middle on the glass, and then you would also get rid of what looks like just dirty glass up in the brown. And it also creates a big brown arrow, and there's nothing there. So again, this idea of negative space, and if we reflect back to the image with the panels and the window, the imbalance and the negative space felt like it told a story about that one window. But when you have negative space that doesn't have something, it's not doing that for you. This is pushing these people down. There's this big dark line. The darkness has also got specks of light in it. I would want you to clone it all out. Is it necessary? Whereas you would still get this idea of a window here because of the reflected people. So I think if you cropped all that out, it might be a bit stronger. And I will say that the specks of stuff in the bottom, like where the people are and their shadows, some of them are a bit more distracting than others. And so maybe not spend the time to clone it all out, but maybe clone like the straight line on the guy in the middle. There's a couple of these that are bigger and really distinctly shaped. Yeah, like those that might be good to just take out so that the eye doesn't go through to them. But I think the idea here is really interesting. So it was nicely seen for sure. So this is another, kind of another example of like deep city shooting, right? When you're shooting into these tall buildings, lots of windows going on here. And I think it looks pretty straight up and down when you kind of follow it through. I think the line is pretty good, except for on the right. It's a little bit off on that right-hand side. So if you go up at the top there, that you can see that pane is getting bigger and bigger. I would probably pull that out so that it squared up over there and I didn't have those little bits of window. And I wish the right-hand side had a bit more contrast, right? Because that looks like two different buildings, or a part of a building that's forward and a part that's back, similar to the one on the left-hand side, and yet the tonality is the same at the bottom. So to make that distinction and give depth, I would just try to figure out a way to either darken the top half or darken the front half on the right-hand side. Next. That's mine. So this reminds me of Italy. I don't know, it could be, you know, any sort of Mediterranean place where they're going to hang their laundry out, but Puerto Rico, Italy, that's kind of what this reminds me of, a place that I'd seen stuff like this. And I love it. So the windows are really cool. The texture of the walls is really cool. These bright, reasonably modern clothes really stand out against this ancient architecture. So I think this is nicely seen. The wire taking us out at the top is a little bit distracting, but there's not really anything you can do to it other than truly cloning the entire set of wire out. Not the one over the window, but the one that you were just on, John, and then all the way down to the clothes, which would be possible, but a hassle. So it's a minor note, but yeah, well seen, and I like the color. I like the sort of wire cabling at the bottom. There's just a lot going on here. Makes me want to go out and have pasta. So this is a cool building. I don't have a clue where this is. I've never seen anything like it. It looks like an office building or something like that, as opposed to a house. But boy, would it be cool to have a house or like condos that had all these different round pillars in them. But I love the colors, like the colors that change here, and it's nice and straight, so you can see on both sides that the building has been stood up correctly for us. And yeah, it's just sort of interesting. Makes me wonder what it is and what goes on here. The white light in there is a little bit bright. I'm not sure how you'd really fix that. And I do think that this could stand, if it just got toned down a little, maybe that white would be better, and that the building itself is a little bit, like I want those shadows between the floors to be a little bit more distinct. It would pop the insides of the buildings out a little bit more. This is really pretty. I like the open doorway. I like the light cascading through. It's a little bit hot on the outside, but not treacherously hot. So, but you can see that we've lost some detail in the stones on the outside of the door. The light on the inside is beautiful, and the light on the inside wall is beautiful. But yeah, right there where you are, John. And the sky is a little bit hot at the top of the doorway. But I do like that we can see the plant. We don't have to see the whole plant. We can see this bench. We can see further out into the distance. Again, it makes you want to walk through the doorway and see what else there is to be revealed here. So, and I love the texture. Like the inside is really beautifully lit. So really nicely seen, and I think, you know, pretty well captured. Another play of light through stained glass in a place of worship. I think this is very interesting. I do think this speaks more to window than portrait, right? The window is so prominent, and it is what is sharp, and it is well lit. And we just have this hint of a person sitting in the chair, and their shadow on the floor. The floor is nicely lit. There's no real hot spots. I think that that's all, you know, really nice, and the window is still what screams out to us as being our primary thing of interest. I would say that in the top very right-hand corner, whatever light that is, it's some kind of a fixture. Clone it out. It has zero value, and you could probably crop about half of that darkness off on the left. So I don't mind the darkness on the right, but if you cut a little bit off to the left, that would put our person in our window a little bit further into the left third of the frame and emphasize the shadow line coming off, the light coming off the floor to the right. I think there's just a little bit where the word meeting is. If you just kind of cropped straight through there, I think that there's just a little bit too much negative space on the left. If you took that out, the negative space on the right would balance the window a little bit better. So we know it's France, but I was going to say, it's another one of those kind of like little walkways that you would find in Europe. I love the like little leading line of the red bricks that take us down. And again, makes us want to know what's around the corner. Where does this little path lead? And what does it look like when I get to that vista on the back? So all very nice. It feels like if you look down where the red pathway comes to the foreground, you can see that it's off there, so that I want the front left to come forward a little ways so that the amount of step is equal on the right-hand side of the step as it is on the left. And on the right-hand side of the frame, you can see that the wall is leaning forward. So not the wall down the walkway, but the wall on the stairs right there where John is now. Standing that up and just skewing those two things a little bit, I think, will give the building a little bit more balance in the picture. It's really lovely. And I think the only thing that I would say I want in terms of the light here is maybe add a levels adjustment. And when you bring up the levels layer, you would drag the little carrot on the right, the white carrot, a little bit to the left till it would meet the pixels, and that would pop the light out, give it a little bit more dimension, so that the brights were a little bit brighter. If you're doing this in Lightroom, you just need to drag up the highlights or the white slider. You have to play to see which one gives you the better result. But that would make all these little light parts of the leaves and plants and stone a little bit brighter, because right now it's a little bit flat. Next. So kind of cool doorway. Again, this yard scene. Oh, there's a bunny in there. How cute is that? I didn't see that when it first went by. There's a bunny in the cage. There's a few things around this that are a little bit distracting for me. So I think the scene in of itself would be really cool, but I don't like the new modern fence in the background. So that brown fence becomes a distraction, like the white picket fence, but then there's this big brown fence in the back. I'm not sure how you would get that out of there. You'd have to really come around to the right. And although I get the idea of these leaves in the front and the rake, I mean, that tells a story, cleaning up after fall and all that kind of stuff. I get it. But I would say that my taste, I'm not a big fan of shooting through blur. And I feel this might be a little bit like heavily weighted in the bottom left corner. So to me, it ends up being a little bit distracting because I'm really interested in like the story, but the leaves are a little bit almost too soft, right? Again, remember what I said at the beginning, it's my 2 cents. And lastly, this tree stump is what I'm looking at. So it's very interesting. This is a super old tree. My God, it must have been huge. What's going on here? And yet I'm supposed to be looking at the doorway. So I'm intrigued by the rake, and I'm really like, only thing that I'm focused on truly is the stump. And because I was focused on the stump is how I saw the bunny. And the bunny, it just kind of blends into the white hatch and the white fence. So I see it and I know it's there, but I keep coming back to the stump. And I think the primary reason for that is, one, it's so massive, but also, again, it's a round, right? It's a very distinct shape, which will draw attention or, draw the eye to it. So I kind of think this scene is neat, but I might play around with it. Like, what does it look like from the right to the left? If I'm standing on the path and I follow the path to the door, putting kind of the stump off to my right, as opposed to right in the center of the image, where it's going to be primary focal point. So I think it looks really interesting. I think there might be some other ways to play with this scene. Next. So this is kind of cool. Again, is it really a doorway, or is it really a picture of a tree? And I would have to say that I think it's probably a picture of a very cool tree, just happens to have a silver doorway in the background. So I'm not sure that I think that it's totally within the theme. Mind you, there is a door there, but I think the tree is much more interesting. I think you don't need half of that ground in the front. I wouldn't cut it all off, but I'd probably cut off a good solid inch. Like if you look on the left, there's 2 leaves. I'd probably chop right along those leaves there. And then I think it's kind of flat. So there's no real deep shadow here. There's nothing really dark. And the brights in the center, I don't really mind that so much, but I think if you pulled the contrast slider a little bit, you would separate the tree from the wall. Right now, the tree feels like it's painted on the wall until you get down to the stump and the ground where you're like, well, it can't be painted on the wall because I see that it's attached to the ground. So I think it's an interesting play. I kind of like it. I mean, I'm like, wow, what if I didn't even have where the tree comes into the ground? Would that keep the illusion alive? Like I said, it feels like it's painted, and then I see that it's anchored. So it's, I think a little bit of contrast would help separate that, unless that's the illusion you're going for. So, yeah, again, this kind of looking in through a window to a window and through a window. I love the patina. It's nice and straight. You can tell it's kind of at an angle, so there's a little bit of diagonal on the sides, but the window itself is straight, and the left-hand side of this you can see is well aligned. And the window in the back is also straight. The problem is that what's through the window in the back is the brightest thing in the picture. So you kind of see all these cool textures, you go into this building and now you're looking out, and yet we're not looking at anything that's discernible. It's just very bright. It doesn't look like rocks, it doesn't look like plants, it doesn't look like anything that we can really focus on, and yet it's the brightest thing in the photo. So I think the challenge here is it's really well seen and it's very interesting, and yet unfortunately the thing that is dead center in the photo, the brightest thing in the image, draws us away from the rest of it, and we get a very bright hot spot there. Thanks. Now back around.
Yep, we are back at the beginning.
Yep, and don't
So
count my
we
image
got-
in your count. So
Yep, so we got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which makes it first, second, third.
okay. I think the doorway with the light trailing through, so that's a step through or whatever, that one first.
Hang on.
think the
Wait, hang on. Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Wrong
wait,
spot.
second. Yeah, keep going. There you go.
There we go.
I think the one with the laundry, 2. And I think the church is 3.
Okay. So third place is Doug.
I don't think there's a Doug on mine.
No, I'm right here. This was taken in Nashville. I was at a conference, and these guys are actually videographers. And I saw the light late in the afternoon, and I told the videographer to kind of sit there. And I'm doing this while I'm supposed to be listening to the conference, and got them set up there. And then to me, meeting the maker just kind of sounded like you're dead, and now that's who you have to talk to.
Mm-hmm. Awesome.
All right. Second place, Pat. Pat online.
Uh-uh.
All right. And first place, Robert Miller.
So I was in Italy on a tour through this old villa, and as we were standing in this courtyard and the host was talking about the history of the place, I looked over and saw this open door and the light shining through and thought, that looks pretty cool. So yes, I agree with your comments about the outside being a bit blown out, and I probably should have paid more attention to that in post, but I didn't.
Yeah,
But
it's so
good catch.
beautiful. And just to kind of highlight, this is another phone shot. So
Yep.
Yeah.
just
iPhone,
goes
no
to
less.
the best camera you got, the one with you. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, iPhone's awesome. Just saying.
All right. Last but not least,
Okay.
monochrome.
Last but not least. Okay. Stop there for just a second. That's also mine. I just as FYI. Okay, keep going.
Okay, we're back at the beginning.
Okay. All right. So this is an interesting scene. There's some things in the sky that I would clone out. So I just put that out there. There's, these like black specks up there. I don't know if that's because it's a texture or is it dust or birds and if it is a texture, I think like once the texture is in place, I would still clone out things that look like specks. So I just kind of put that out there. The building itself, I think doesn't look straight. It looks like it's keystone with it being tighter at the bottom than it like so thinner left to right at the bottom than it is at the top. And I like the path that goes out to it, but whatever that is on the wall that is white, it doesn't belong. Like that is, I don't know if that's because something was cloned, but when you're, a trick to this would be to cut the, take the marquee tool and make a square of the panels above it and then drag that down and put it over that space, line up the lines, and then use a mask to blend it in, and then just use a brightness adjustment to like get the color right. But whatever that is, it's a super distraction. Like I look through this whole thing and I go right to whatever that is. And so if it was like that on the building, that's a different issue, something to think about. If it's because you've cloned something, just got to be more mindful of color balance and stuff like that, because it definitely draws the eye up from the rest of the image, and that's not your goal. So next. So this is really cool. I really do like the angles here, and I like the highlights and the shadows and the play of those darks and lights. Like I think the lights handled nicely. I like the sky, and I really like that it comes up as a pinnacle, but I also like that it's mildly off center. So it's not exactly off center. It's probably faintly off center at the top, but I like that. Had it been centered, that'd be okay too. I think maybe the only thing that I would change is where the building comes down on the right, and there's like, it comes down the arch and then it turns and angles again down to the end of the frame. I wonder if you widened out the building so that that corner where that corner is created just was on the frame itself, right? So you didn't have the extra angle. Do you know where I'm talking about, John? All right, up, nope, over, left, up, 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 right there. If that met our outside frame, I just wonder what that would look like. So it's nitpicky, but instead of coming down to the sky there, would it balance differently with that building on the top left? So anyway, that's it. Mine. So this is one of these pictures very similar to some other things we've seen, where there's a whole series of common windows or similar windows. And I actually think this is nicely seen. Like the drapes are not the same. There's, one has a couch in the top right or some kind of piece of furniture. The bottom left one is like this billowing of the shade or the curtain. And then dead center here, we have a person who probably knows their picture's being taken. But I like the idea that each window is different and each one tells like a slightly different story. So kind of fun, right, in that sense. Even though it feels very straight, even though all the windows are just slightly different shapes. I wouldn't necessarily try to correct it because the bricks themselves feel straight and side to side feels straight. So it almost feels like this whole building is a little bit off and cockeyed, and but each window has its own sort of particular interest, and I just think that's kind of cool. So this is the doorway into a gazebo. It's interesting and I like it, but it's very flat. So they've done the photographer's done a nice job of sort of getting it centered. It's nicely in balance, and yet it's very flat in light. So the whites aren't really white and the blacks aren't really blacks. And when you're doing monochromatic, whether it is all single color or black and white, you really want to pull and stretch those pixels, right? So in this case, you want the highlights to be brighter, particularly on the pillars and sort of atop of the framing of the building. And yet you also want the shadows to be darker. So all of the little lattice could be darker, as well as the deep shadows into those plants in the background. And that would give our whole image more depth. So just something to think about and play with, maybe in post, just to give this a bit more contrast. So this is actually really cool, right? unlike some of our other open portals, this one we're seeing into nothingness. So we're clearly on the outside of this building because that's where all the light is. And yet when we look in, there's nothing. So it's like an abyss, and it tells its own story. The window and the center of the shutter is nice and straight, and all the bricks are straight. So it's nice and square. It doesn't feel like it's kind of tilted or leaning. I kind of wish I could see the fourth arch. So I'm seeing 2.5 arches. I wish there was a little bit more at the top. But everything else about it I really like. The texture, the rope on the thing, this blackness on the inside, you know, all of that is very intriguing, and again, could tell its own story. We could write a story about all the bad things that are happening inside this building that we can't, you know, we can't pierce the darkness. Next. So this is kind of cool. I like that the building doesn't touch the edges. I do like that it all kind of comes in. I think the building is built that way to be thinner at the top. So I think that's very interesting. I would love to see this reflecting sky. You could just imagine all the play of the lines. It almost feels like it's not a building at all, but rather a house made out of toothpicks, you know, that kind of thing, or a building made out of toothpicks. Very interesting, the graphic nature of the repeating patterns and stuff like that. I feel like we could move a little bit as a photographer to the left to score up that dark shadow in the middle to kind of get that balanced a little bit better, but you know, that's just a minor thought. I think it's interesting, and the fact that the sky is completely gone. That's a beautiful thing about black and white. That as a boring blue sky would have been just that, boring blue sky, but in black and white, it really brings out the graphic nature of the building. So nicely seen. So this is really interesting to me. Talk about an ornate door in the most odd place, right? It's just, is this a composite? Is it really there? You know, you just don't know. So it makes you stop and wonder, is this just a rock wall and somebody had a cool door and they put it in? Or is it built in this way, and what on earth is on the other side? So I think this, again, about storytelling, it is a little bit flat. I think it could, the doorway itself isn't. The door is quite lovely, but the rock looks like it could use a little bit deeper shadow in these crevices. Some of them are a little bit kind of tonality flat. I think you could cut about 1 inch off the bottom. It just, you know, there's a little bit more foreground here than you need. Bring us a little bit closer to the door so we could see some more detail by the crop, but yeah, very cool. So nice taken night photography. You know, I like the scene. I like looking into the door. A couple things around it. I want the word joy is not it's not sharp, so it's a little bit hard to tell where the focal point is. I mean, it feels like the 20314 is a bit sharper, but it all feels a little bit soft. I wish I could get closer. And I say that because I don't think the lamp in the top window is adding any value. And also the top of the door feels a little bit off. But if you crop down and you kind of cut out that like bright line, not the overhang line, but like the one above it, where it's really the edge of like probably a patio outside that window, you don't need that. You don't need the lamp. And if you did that, you kind of cut us and bring us a little bit closer so we could really appreciate what we're looking through the door. And I think that'd make it a little bit stronger. And I just think the making sure that maybe the stags on the inside were actually the things that were sharp, so we kind of looked past it, or maybe the big nutcracker on the right and the packages, if that was in focus. It all feels a little bit soft at the point of entry, which is really what the subject is. So it looks like a really fabulous doorway. I just think it's a little bit off on the focal point. So this is funny because it's clearly a staircase to a doorway, and then a reflection of that staircase on the wall. And yet it also feels like a staircase on a beach to a door into nothing but sky. So like there's this really weird play of light here because that wall is so white. So I think it's interestingly seen, and I think it is also very interestingly processed. The stairs look low on the left, high on the right, and the horizon on the black against the wall also looks low on the left and high on the right. So I might square that up a little bit to give it yet even more graphic nature, right? So just draw a horizontal line across the stair and across the bottom of the ground at the ground level, and that'll square up for you in Photoshop and in Lightroom in the geometry section, and that will just emphasize the graphic nature, but really kind of interesting, and makes you have to look at it multiple times to think about what you're seeing. So nicely seen. It looks like a doorway to a mine. Oh, actually, it says mine at the bottom, but that was just my guess because it was wood in this rock on this hill. It's very interesting, and it is intriguing. I almost kind of wish we could see a little bit into the mine to give that allure of what's there. And I think this is once a challenge because the sky, there's a lot of space at the top that is blank, and the real interest is in the center. So is there a half an inch or so that you can kind of just, again, crop it down, not so that the whole sky is gone and not till you get to the log, but maybe just above the rocks on the right and just cut it off? That'll kind of stack it down a little bit. So instead of letting us wander up to the bright sky, but the image itself and the rocks and the doorway, I love the texture, and I think it's really interesting. Again, one of those things is what's behind it. Can I open it? Can I go in? It's very cool. Okay, there you go, back around.
So we've got a total of 10 images in this one, which again puts us at for second, third.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna give the windows with the human, fourth one, top row. So first, I'm going to get, let's see, I think I'm gonna go with the black hole. And then the second on the right, I put your different, hang on a second. Second on the bottom row, right? Second, that one, yeah, sorry. Give me a second.
Do I have the placement right?
So, yes, so I
The
will
first,
tell
second,
you,
third.
because I'm judging, I do love the fifth one over, but it is Jeff's. So I know he's online. I love it. It's a beautiful photo and it's really nicely done. And because it's yours, you're not getting a ribbon. Okay. You guys didn't necessarily hear that, but what I heard was I hate you from downstairs.
Okay, so place, Gretchen. Is Gretchen on? There she is.
Not online tonight. It's got a kids concert, but I do believe this was taken at a brewery, if I recall.
Nice.
With her
Yeah,
cell
that's
phone, I
nicely
do
seen.
believe.
Yep. Next time you talk to her, tell her I just thought it was a cool capture.
I will.
Thank you.
Second place, Robert Miller.
So this was taken at a warehouse in Brooklyn, old warehouse that has since been redeveloped, but that one window was the only one that had the opening. The others were all shuttered, and it just caught my eye, and there you go.
Yep, nicely seen.
Done. And first place, Pat.
Still not here, so.
Going to see, man, he must be present to win, right?
Past his bedtime. Yeah, exactly. I'll tell him that.
Okay, so best in show.
Good Lord, is there really that many?
Actually, I think there may be one
we've got
missing. No,
1, 2, 3,
but yeah, it
4,
should be
5, 6. So there should be 12.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it should be 6. First place. So
Oh.
let's see. So,
Yeah, that was in there.
all right, so
That's in there.
yeah.
Meeting my
Oh, you know what?
maker
This
should
one,
be in
this
there.
one should not be. That was a number 3. I got to hit delete. Okay, so what else?
So go to intermediate color.
Yep. So that
Okay,
one
that's,
is
yep.
there.
Well, so Gretchen is third. If you go back to the best in show, that one isn't
Yep.
there.
So I know how I did that. I know the error that I made when I was dragging this. So that's definitely on me.
Meeting
And
my maker should not be in there.
yep.
Yeah.
Good catch. And
We still have a couple too many.
You've got four monochromes, they should only have 3.
yep. So let's go here. So yep,
Okay, so that
Pat
one is,
and Beth
I
won
think
that
Milo
one.
was, yeah, that one's one.
Was it?
I think, yeah, I think that one was, I think that was a second or something.
Yeah, it was an
Or
honorable
yes, it was
mention.
on, it was honorable mention, yeah.
Yep. Let's take that one out. And we're almost there. Still got one too many.
I think Red Door is, was an award, but I don't think it wouldn't be in monochrome, right? There we go. Nope. It's
Yeah, it was intermediate.
color.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
okay,
Honorable
so that
mention.
one.
Good memory. So that one goes out.
Okay,
And
here
down
are our
to the
contenders.
best in show. Can't get them all in one row.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, let's do it. Intriguing. Damn. There's a couple here that I want to say that they all win. I'm struggling.
Well, she means 6.
Yeah, because all 6 are best in show. Can I do that? Is that my right here?
I'm gonna let you get off with that.
Nice try though. Getting yelled at from downstairs. You know, I think, God, this is really hard. I think it's going to be distorted reality. And the reason, so I will tell you, I struggle because I think the cat is really spectacular, but it's really a portrait of a cat as opposed to a window. And I really like your step through. But I think, so I just want to be clear, like why I'm choosing the one I'm choosing. I think the fact that distortion is so different than the actual pane of glass, right? I think it is really the play in the mind that happens here where you cannot relate what's on the left to the right, but you know that it is the light coming through is what I find really intriguing. And to me, being able to see that is why I'm picking it, because to stop and go, wow, like these two things are not alike, right? They're not in balance, but they are in balance. I think that's just really interesting. So that's the reason I'm picking this one. The others are all super good. But I think I come back to this one based on the color, nicely handled in terms of exposure, and then this really crazy distortion on the right is really intriguing. So congrats.
Yep. Well, congratulations to all the winners, and of course, you know, the best in show, Beth Fetter. So again, well done, everybody. Congratulations, and thanks again to Denise for stepping in at the last minute for judging this competition tonight. A lot of good feedback, and definitely some of the comments that were in the chat were reinforcing that. So Again, well done. Thanks, everybody. And with that, see you in the new year. Merry Christmas.
Bye, everybody. Take care. Thanks, you guys, for having me. Bye.